We are live. Hi, everybody. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show of the 221002 Core 2 A+ study group. Let's see if I can get my screens set up here. I need to pop out my chat. Hey, chat room. There's the chat. Put them over here. Let's put the stream health on and put that over there. All right. So now, let's see if I've got cameras ready to go. I think I do. Those look good. You can kind of see what I see. These are my camera views, these four little boxes across the top. And I have these extra down here for other inputs that I don't use. And then there's the preview and the program that you see. And that all looks very, very good. What else do we have going on? I think I've got presentation ready to go. We've got Q&A ready to go. We've got recordings going here, recordings going there. We're in pretty good shape. We're in pretty good shape. So, some Singer's Serious Cinnamon Soothing Throat Spray. The actual name of it. Hi, chat room and everybody. Good to see you. Joseph says, Professor, I just bought your notes and exam. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Will I get a paperback also, the physical version? Well, that would depend on which edition you purchased. If you purchased the digital edition, it's the downloadable PDF. If you purchase the physical edition, then it is the downloadable PDF, and I will send you the paperback edition. If you bought the digital edition, but you really wanted the physical edition, just send me a note and I can send you a coupon to upgrade for the cost, with a discount for what you've already paid. I guess that's the difference, because the physical edition does cost more because it's, physical. It's a physical entity. And paper is expensive. Don't know if you paper and color, which the course notes are, of course. Both of those are expensive. Oliver says, just passed my Core 1 thanks to you. I didn't do it. You did it. Congratulations. Ready to get going. Ready to get rocking on Core 2. Doesn't sound good when I say it. It looks better when you type it than how I say it. It is off the chain. No, that doesn't. It's not there. Not hip and trendy. There's Burbank, Christian from Burbank. What games you playing lately? I have been so far. What's funny? Here's what's funny. None. I've not been playing any games lately. I'm in the middle of producing my Security Plus course. And there, out of 176 videos that are produced, I'm on video 110, I think is what it is. So I am so busy working constantly to get that out. I'm trying to get it out as quickly as possible. And my goal is when that is over, I can finally get back on my Xbox. So that's one of those things where it's more about my timing and me not spending any time on the game, because I really should be doing video editing and content creation. So I am kind of in this ridiculous workaholic sort of hole right now. But that's sort of how it is when you're doing these courses. It's very cyclical. Not really cyclical, but there are peaks and valleys. So during the process of creating these courses, it is go, 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 go. And then when it's done, I can take a breath. So right now I'm in go, go, go mode. So, but what I've been trying to do, though, here's the funny part. I've been trying to upgrade my Xbox, even though I'm not playing the Xbox, which I know is sort of ridiculous. But the problem is you can't get your hands on these things right now. So I'm constantly watching the market to see what the Xbox Series X, which has not been available since, November. It's just not available. It's just not there. So I've been working to hopefully wait until there is a big group of them. I suspect, there's our 5-minute warning, I suspect that Microsoft is sort of putting them all in a big pile. The problem right now is people are purchasing them and reselling them for twice the cost, which is ridiculous. It's a gaming system. So I think what they're going to do is put a ton of them in a big pile, get these big piles dropped onto the retailers all at one time, so that there will be enough for the vast majority of people to get their hands on them, or enough that I think they can remove the black market after market sale type things. So that's how it works. Yeah, graphics cards too. The graphics card thing probably related to the Xbox thing, I'm thinking. And of course, this all goes back to cryptocurrency. That's the reason that I can't play Division 2, Elite Dangerous, or whatever I'm going to do on there. I don't know. The reason I can't play those on my Xbox is Bitcoin. That's the reason, which is a silly reason, but here we are. And they're trying to figure out, how can we make both sides of this happy? How can we make both of these sides really happy? Can we create products for the cryptocurrency people and the video game people at the same time? No, you can't. You can't. Yeah, they tried, but you can't. You cannot. So that's one of those ridiculous things. I like gaming. I wouldn't call myself a gamer just because I haven't touched the Xbox controller in so long. But I just if this was not a thing, I would just be on the couch all day. I would just be gaming all day. It would be worthless. Mrs. Professor Messer would throw me out, say, "You bum, go get a job," and she wouldn't be wrong, because I'd just be there all the time, all the time. Just one of those things, I guess. So Rolando says, you want to get in the IT world? Fantastic. Just finish your Google IT support? Fantastic. Should you take A+ or Security Plus? What do employers in your area want you to have? That's the real question. You actually may find that none of the employers are even asking for Google IT support certification, because it's just so new that employers don't even know to ask. So that's the situation that you find yourself in. You just kind of have to promote it when you finally get in front of them. But you may find they're all asking for Security Plus, so they're all asking for A+. The problem is that it's different depending on where you are. In the DC area, a lot of Security Plus. In LA, in Dallas, in Chicago, probably something else. That's the thing. That's the way it works. 2 minutes to go, everyone. This is not the show. I get emails sometimes saying, I was going to watch, but it's just the back of your head, and that's ridiculous. And they're not wrong. That would be ridiculous, but this isn't the show. It's the pre-show. During the show, you'll see me on the screen, so it's a little different. But right now, I'm sort of making sure, is the mic working? Are the lights working? Is the chat room working? Is the recording going? Are all of my cameras up? Is anything flickering? Sometimes that happens, and we have to go unplug and plug back in again. Right now, we're okay. I'm knock on a few things. Daniel, taking you 1,002 in a few days. Should you start applying for jobs with your A+? Yeah, start applying for jobs now. Should you go Network Plus before you start applying? Kind of the same thing. You sort of do have the same situation where you need to find out what employers are looking for. Are any of them asking for Networking Plus? If not, just go get the job. You can figure out the rest as it goes. When I have a video, how to get a job in IT with no experience. It's on my YouTube channel. And it goes through all of these strategies for how do I even know what to get, because these are all important. These are all important things to know. You need to do some recon. You need to create a spreadsheet. You need to fill in everything you can possibly find about the environment that you're about to put your job postings in. That's the thing. How many performance-based questions are there on the exam? It's random. It's handful. It's 5 plus or minus a few. Could be 2, could be 7, could be 10. It's different depending on what's going on. Oh, look, 12 noon. It's time to do something. Let's go set up and get a green light from, well, that was not promising. Get a green light from our keynote. There it is. That looks good. Let's do a study group, everybody. It's time to get this thing. Hopefully I got the right graphic up. I do. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2021 Professor Messer Core 2. That would be our 220-1002 A+ study group. Hi, chat room. Hello, people watching on the replay. Thank you for joining us. We have so many different things to go through today. I've got the entire first hour is just me asking questions. So it's not even the part where you get to talk to me directly yet. But I do have questions for you in this first hour that come directly from the Core 2 exam objectives. And you can, if you're here live, you can participate live. You can answer the questions online using the World Wide Web. I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. We've got also in the second hour, I open up the phone lines and I take questions from the chat room. We did a little bit of that already in the pre-show. We'll do some more of that in the second hour, so stick around for that one. Here's how you can participate live and in person, or sort of virtually in person. You can open up a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. The QA stands for something. I've got to think about that. You could also, if you like using an app for this, there is an app called the Socrative Student app. The Socrative Student app. There's a teacher app. That's mine. You want to download the Student app, and that Socrative Student app will ask you for a room name. Make sure you type in this room name exactly as it is shown. The room name is Professor Messer, ProfessorMesser. If you type that in properly, there will be a question waiting for you. And that question is one that comes to us from last month. We call this our rewind question. And the question asks, a client computer is not able to properly resolve an IP address. Which of the following tools would be the best for troubleshooting this issue? Would it be NSLOOKUP, netstat, traceroute, or ping? A client computer is not able to properly resolve an IP address. Which of the following tools would be the best for troubleshooting this issue? Would it be NSLOOKUP, netstat, traceroute, or ping? Our only rules in this game that we play during this first hour is you cannot answer in the chat room. Please do not answer in the chat room. Please do not put any hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to that link that's on your page, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer there. We will come back to this question in just a moment. Well, thank you for being here. We do one of these study groups for each one of these exams that I have courses for, which would be the Core 1A+, Core 2A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. We do one of these live streams for each one of those every month. So we also have new videos that are being released all the time on the YouTube channel. And since I'm working on the new Security Plus certification, there are lots of videos that are going on that channel. I think I've done about 8 or 9 just this week, and I've got another 4 that I edited this morning, and there's so much that we are doing. So have a look at the YouTube channel by going to professormesser.com/YouTube. Click the like button, subscribe, there's a bell. You know what to do. You know how all that works. There's also a daily A+ pop quiz question. Not sure if you're aware of that. I post it on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. I post a prettier version of it on Instagram because there's a nice picture I can put with it at professormesser.com/Instagram. Make sure you follow or do whatever it is they say you should do on those sites, and you'll be in the know. You'll be on the inside. You'll get all of those things I just mentioned. Today, we're going to talk about the A+ exam. So the A+ exam is really 2 exams, the 220-1001. If you were here 2 days ago on Thursday, we had our 1001 or our Core 1 study group. Today's our Core 2 study group. Core 2 is referring to the 220-1002 exam. This is an exam that was released on January 15, 2019. Which means if you do the math, they usually retire these about 3.5 years after they're released. That means the estimated release date, estimated retirement date rather, for this would be July 2022. I suspect they may push that a little bit just because Security Plus was pushed, Network Plus was pushed. This may push as well. So keep an eye open for that. But the nice part about this, as we sit here in April of 2021, you got over a year before this exam even is looking to go away. I have a feeling it might be after that, but we'll see. Always check in with the CompTIA website for the specific dates. I do not have the official dates on here. These are merely estimations based on what CompTIA has done in the past. For the 221002 exam, you need to score a 700. This is on a scale from 100 to 900. It's kind of weird, isn't it? But that's the way it works. So there are 800 points you have to get, and I guess you have to get 600 of those 800. I'm not sure. It's odd how they set that up. I think that's intentional. But the goal is to at least get enough questions right that you would score 700 on whatever grading scale they are using there. If you have some older materials, some of you will sometimes send me an email that says, I have this book. It's for the 22901 exam. Can I use that? Or it's for the 22902 exam. Can I use that? The problem is that they update this exam with new topics. And for the 221002, 23% of the topics are brand new on this exam, which means if you were to study exclusively from 900 series materials, you would probably not learn enough to pass the current exam. There's such a gap there, and the gap is so big that you're probably not going to do very well. So make sure that all of your study materials are specifically written for the 221001 and 221002. As a general rule, always make sure your study materials match the version of the exam that you're planning to take. The 221002 has topics such as operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, operational procedures, and potpourri. There are those four that we are going to discuss today in our study group. So let's see how you do with those. I think that's going to be pretty much all of the topics we cover today are from those four different areas. Nothing else that we might cover for. Plenty to cover there. The difficulty level between these two I find is comparable. It's obviously different content between the Core 1 and the Core 2, but the difficulty level between both of those is pretty much the same. It's just a little bit different. I think where most people deal from a difficulty level perspective is in your background. You may have spent a lot of time working with the hardware of a computer, or you may have spent a lot of time working with the operating systems. Well, that probably means one of these exams is going to be a little bit easier than the other for you. But I think overall, the difficulty level, if you were going into both of these with no knowledge whatsoever, I think you would find them comparable in their difficulty. There is, of course, all of my videos available for you to watch for free online. The entire course is there. There's no registration. There's nothing behind a paywall. There's nothing that you would have to do or tell me. In fact, I don't keep track of those things. I don't care. I just want you to have access to the training materials. But there are a number of people that would like offline versions of those videos. You'd like an offline version in audio form, MP3 format, so you can listen when you're in your car or when you're working out. There's, of course, I've written other materials as well, such as my course notes, my practice exams. I have written a book exclusively for this Success Bundle called my Exam Hacks ebook. I shouldn't say it's exclusive to this Success Bundle anymore. I'll explain that in just a moment. But I just take everything I've written and created for the 221002, I've put into the Success Bundle. Everything's there. So if you were interested in getting that package, it is available on my website. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/1002success, or follow those links in the menus on the site. There are also free questions. They're archives from these study groups. So the questions on my website are in these 10-question form, sample form. It's my Take 10 challenge. I have questions there for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. You will find them at professormesser.com/take10. It's a good place to go. There is a video replay version of this available immediately afterwards on YouTube. Takes a minute or two to process, and then you can watch the whole thing. But there is also a podcast version of this available. You can find it at professormesser.com/podcast, and all the links are there for you to do anything that you would like to have. So there's plenty to go through there. Now, if you go to YouTube about a day later, my marketing manager, Lori, will go through all of this video. She's having to watch this. Hi, Lori. She probably sees me more than she talks to me because she has to watch this whole thing all over again. And she puts timestamps there, so you can go back for years and see the timestamps of where the first question, second question, maybe that can help you find the things that you're looking for very quickly. Now, there is also something new on my site. You may notice that there are now voucher discounts available on my site. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. There are discounts out there and available, and you can get a great discount on ProfessorMesser.com for your A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. These, and I can put more there. If you have other CompTIA exams you would like vouchers for, tell me, and I'll put them out there as well. These are discounts that you can get. Takes me about less than a day to turn these around and get them back to you, but I will email you with those voucher codes. There's a whole description on ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers that gives you more information about that. But I thought you can go anywhere and get vouchers. There needs to be something extra that you get. And so I thought a perfect companion to this would be if you get the vouchers and you would also get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. So for no additional cost, I'll include that because my Exam Hacks ebook I wrote as a strategy guide for CompTIA exams. It doesn't really talk about the topics. This is for A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus, or any CompTIA exam. But there are things and strategies and life hacks that you could do prior to the exam. There are things you can do during the exam, and some things you can do after the exam to improve your score. So this is an opportunity to, I think, just value add to this. If you're getting a voucher, you're going to need one anyway. Why not get your hands on these Exam Hacks ebook? Because there might be a tip in there you didn't think about, or if you've never taken a CompTIA exam, you may not even realize some of the things you can do while you're in the exam to give yourself some extra points. So all of that information available at my website, ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. We're so pleased that we're able to do that. You've been asking for it for so long, and now there it is. Back to the question we asked earlier, which was, a client computer is not able to properly resolve an IP address. Which of the following tools would be the best for troubleshooting this issue? Would it be NSLOOKUP, NetStat, traceroute, or ping? If we show our results, 46% of you say NSLOOKUP. We've got 22% that said ping, 17% said traceroute, and 15% said NetStat. So this is great because now I'm looking at the things that I put into my video. Did I do this last time? The answer, 46% of you said NSLOOKUP. Since you're having a problem resolving an IP address, it's a DNS issue. Isn't it always a DNS issue? But this is a DNS issue. And of all of these different commands, the only one that really helps you understand DNS and can query the DNS server directly is indeed NSLOOKUP. Now, the reason I'm laughing about this is because I do all of these slides and all of the details beforehand. But guess what slide I put on? I put NetStat on the slide. It's not NetStat. This is wrong. I got this question incorrect, apparently. So the correct answer, why did I put NetStat? What was I thinking? It was literally a copy and paste from last month. This is last month's question. For everybody who's looking at this, I don't know, but there we are. So your answer is actually correct. A, NSLOOKUP, the correct answer. I would also accept dig, although I didn't put dig into this list. So dig would be another good one to go with. So we can just pretend that I did not put the wrong slide there. We're going to pretend that it's NSLOOKUP on that slide, and then we're fine. See, everything's great. So that was our question from last month. That was your rewind question. Hopefully that can give you some perspective as to what you need to do to get in, answer the questions, and now you've been able to do that. So let's do a new question. Whenever I do the first new question every month, it's a performance-based question. Performance-based questions are questions that are not multiple choice. They are fill in the blank, matching, drag and drop, maybe give you a scenario that you have to complete something on the screen. It could be many different things. The question I have for you today is a matching question. So I have one that is really also not just a matching question, but has a similar style to the matching questions that you might get on the exam. So that being said, let's do our performance-based question of the month. That is this matching question that asks, match the function to the Windows utility. Some utilities will not have a match because you will notice I have 4 functions or 4 descriptions here, but I have 7 Windows utilities. Now, this is very similar to the format they have on the exam. So you can't just do a one-to-one And then the ones you don't know, you can kind of move around till you think you have it right. There are going to be 3 here that are left over at the end. So this is what we're going to go through. Those of you listening on the podcast, let's step through each one of these functions. The 4 functions are locate an application error message from 2 days ago. The second is identify high CPU utilization across a 24-hour period. The third is disable the print spooler. And the fourth is validate a RAM module upgrade. So the 7 different options I have available to you are memory diagnostics, print management, event viewer, local users and groups, services, performance monitor, and device manager. Those are the 7. So we have to match these things up to be able to figure this out, and 3 of these are going to be left over at the end, just so we're aware. So those, again, for those listening, locate an application error message from 2 days ago, identify high CPU utilization across a 24-hour period, disable the print spooler, and validate a RAM module upgrade. So these different options are memory diagnostics, print management, event viewer, local users and groups, services, performance monitor, and device manager. Now, if you think they're already in this order that they should be, you can simply put into the online Socrative, you can put 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and you're done. That is not the answer, but that's how you would do it. You don't have to type this whole thing in. And in fact, I will be scanning through these. I should show these answers on my screens to give me a feel of how you're doing with them. Some of these are gimmies. Some of these are a little more difficult, which also is a very common thing to find on the exam. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, lock in your answer, and see what might be the ones that you add. Now, we won't be able to go through each one of these or understand the percentages correct because this is effectively a fill-in-the-blank online. But we will go through each one of these and figure out why we would match it with that particular utility. Now, some of these descriptions, like let's just take the first one, locate an application error message from 2 days ago. There may be multiple ways to do this, but in this list, there's only one way to do it. And that's another thing you have to think about on the exam. The way that you do it may not be the option available on your screen. So you have to find the one that fits with that. So you have to think very broadly with these questions. It's very common for CompTIA to do something like that, where you're reading the question, you're thinking, oh, I know this answer. And then you look at the available options and the thing you were thinking is not there. And now you have to figure out, why is it not listed? Well, I got to find the best answer according to what they have listed on that view. Number of you are putting in those answers. You're typing them in now. I'm watching the answers come in. I'm seeing the number of people submitting these things through. Stop Googling. Number of you are Googling this. I can see you. You think I can't see you, but I can see you. No more Googling with all of these pieces. Let's step through each one of these and see what we have. So we'll start with our first Windows utility, locate an application error message from 2 days ago. And if you're ever looking for anything that happens in Windows, and you'll know this if you ever look through this utility, it's C, Event Viewer. Event Viewer has just amazing amounts of detail there inside of the Event Viewer, almost too much. You have to become almost an expert in how to filter Event Viewer to be able to use Event Viewer very well. So have a look through Event Viewer. If you don't have any experience with Event Viewer, bring that up. Have a look through it. Make sure you're familiar with those details. But that is a very good way to locate an error message from 2 days ago because Event Viewer stores all of this information in the logs. Second on our list, identify high CPU utilization across a 24-hour period. And your answer there should have been Performance Monitor. Performance Monitor is a perfect utility to have the system collect metrics, collect performance metrics really from almost anything inside of Windows. There are hundreds and hundreds of metrics you can gather. The default that comes up is utilization, I think. But you can gather metrics based on disk I/O, on memory, on other internals inside of your Windows system. Just a huge amount of statistics you can gather, and it will do it for a very long period of time, and it will store those so that later on you can simply open a report that shows you the last couple days of CPU utilization. So this may be something you're wondering, is this happening throughout the day? Is this something that only happens at lunchtime? Is it something that only happens at 1 a.m.? What is going on? You can collect all of those metrics and have them available in Performance Monitor. Third on our list was disable the print spooler. Well, if you're in there messing around with the print spooler, then you're in there in Services, enabling and disabling the print spooler service. In Windows, a service is an application that runs effectively behind the scenes. You can't see it. There is no user interface for this application. So the only way to control the application is through the Services applet in the control panel, Administrative Tools. Services is a way that you can enable, disable. In fact, you can tell the service if it fails, automatically restart. You can do a lot of different things inside of Services. But Print Spooler runs as a service since there is no user interface to the Print Spooler. And that's a great place to turn on, turn off those features. Last on our list is validate a RAM module upgrade. I think this was the gimme. It should have been easy to pick out that RAM is memory, therefore the memory diagnostics would be a great way to tell if the memory of your system is really being seen and used properly by the Windows operating system. Memory diagnostics is a great way to do that. So that leaves us with really three others that we did not use. Print management is a utility that allows us to manage a queue of print jobs. Really works in conjunction with the print spooler, doesn't it? So we're able to see in a print server what job is set to print next. Are there any errors with that printer? Should we delete everything in the queue and have people resend the information? That's a great one to have there. Local users and groups is useful to be able to manage the user accounts that are on a system and set some parameters for what these accounts can do. And lastly, device manager, which is also useful for managing device drivers or other types of hardware inside of your system. This is a good one. But device manager allows you to enable and disable certain drivers, certain pieces of hardware, but it doesn't allow you to do things like validate a RAM module upgrade. That's not what the device driver does. So of all of these, those first four really matched up pretty well. Locating an application error message from 2 days ago is Event Viewer. Identifying high CPU utilization across a 24-hour period is Performance Monitor. Disabling the print spooler is Services. And validating a RAM module upgrade is Memory Diagnostics. Now, this is one of those where you might get partial credit, but we don't know. CompTIA said, they have a frequently asked questions file on their website that said sometimes they will give you partial credit, but sometimes they won't. It's really not an answer, but that is the answer they give. So I would hope in a question like this that partial credit would be an option. Of course, you'll never know because they don't tell you what the results of a particular question are at the end of the exam. We can only take a guess and do the best we can. So there's our answer. That's our performance-based question for the month. Hopefully you were familiar with these. All of those types of Windows utilities are utilities you need to know. They come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure that you are familiar with all of them. Let's jump ahead. Our next question is a multiple choice-based question. So we can not have to worry so much about performance-based questions. We can choose from what's available. Our next question is one that asks, which of the would be considered a method of certificate-based authentication? Is that CAC, token generator, fingerprint, GPS coordinates, or a PIN, P-I-N, a PIN? Which of the following would be considered a method of certificate-based authentication? Is that CAC, token generator, fingerprint, GPS coordinates, or a PIN? If you think you know the answer, no answering in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. This one, I have the correct answer on the next slide. For those of you wondering, had I lost it? Still a good question. We still don't know if I've lost it or not. But in this particular case, it's not one that we have to worry about because I got this one right. I hope. We'll find out in a moment. It's a mystery for all of us. So stick around. You'll find out. Lock in your answer, professormesser.com/QA. Be a great way to do that. If you're ever trying to figure out those details and trying to worry about how to figure out the answers that are there, these multiple choice questions, at least you may be able to remove the ones you know are not correct. So that might help you too. You might look at that answer and say, well, I know that one isn't certificate-based authentication, so you can throw that one out, which leaves you a few others to go through. On my questions, I tend to give you 5 answers because I think it's a little more difficult. Plus, it gives you more options to choose from. There is, on your exam, you'll find most of the multiple choice questions are 4 answers. There are some that have 5 and 6 and 7. Some of them are questions that have multiple answers, and they will tell you how many. But these that I give you in this study group generally are a single answer that you would have in there. So it's one of those that you would look through to figure that out. So a number of you are Googling certificate-based authentication. This is very common on these CompTIA questions, is they don't tend to ask you direct questions. They don't tend to ask you what I call the flashcard questions or trivia questions. They're not giving you, what does CAC stand for? They're not ever going to ask you that. They're going to ask you a question like this. What does PIN? What is that? What is GPS? What are those things? They aren't going to ask you what those abbreviations stand for. They are instead going to ask you a question like this, where you have to know what certificate-based authentication is and then know what you could use to perform certificate-based authentication. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, which of the following would be considered a method of certificate-based authentication? Is it CAC, token generator, fingerprint, GPS coordinates, or PIN? The answer, we're a little bit tied on this one. We're a little bit tied for first between token generator and CAC. So pretty close, 43% and 41% respectively. We have also a tie for second with 8% apiece between fingerprint and PIN. And then 0% for GPS coordinates. Well, how ironic that that would be 0%, because as it turns out, that's incorrect. That is true. It's 0%. You shouldn't answer GPS coordinates. The answer, though, for certificate-based authentication, there's a number of different ways to authenticate with a certificate. Certificate-based authentication means that there's some type of cryptographic certificate that you've been given. Ostensibly, the only useful part of this is if it's been digitally signed by someone to prove that it really did come from them. And they're handing you this certificate and say, if you ever need access, just show this to me. And I'll know that I gave this to you because I digitally signed it and I can confirm that. And I know that you must have this thing that I gave you, this digital certificate. But there's a lot of ways to store that certificate. How would you present that certificate to someone? A very common way is on a smart card. So the actual certificate is part of the card itself. And when you log into your computer, there may be a USB connected slot, or it may be built into your laptop, and you plug in the smart card and it reads the certificate and validates it on the server side. So whoever is validating that knows that you must at least be in possession of that smart card because you plugged it into that system. It was able to read the certificate. It validated that it's a good certificate. Therefore, you are allowed access as long as all the other different validations like a password and other multiple factors are checked. In the U.S. federal government, there's a type of smart card that is a PIV, a personal identity verification card, very much like the one on the screen. It's got a picture, has information. It doubles as an ID card, but also has information like a certificate on it. That's where that chip is for. Those chips that we've now gotten very comfortable knowing that they're on our cards. That's what's storing that information. It's how you can access that through those interfaces there, those different pins. PINs, different pins on the pin on the card. There's another type of card used by the government is a CAC, a common access card. This one is specific to the U.S. federal government, but a similar idea. It's an ID card that has a certificate on it. Another great way with a certificate, or at least to validate the certificate or get it to the other side, is through a standard called 802.1x. 802.1x is a way to provide additional validation or verification to gain access to a network. So 802.1x, very useful. If you have ever logged into a wireless network at work, it's probably using 802.1x to validate your login, to really prompt you for the login and then perform the validation of that login. So in this case, one of these looks familiar. The CAC Common Access Card was one of the options available, and there it is. 34% of you said Common Access Card. Now, 34% of you also said token generator. Token generator is one of those apps or devices. Do I have my token generator here nearby? I don't, but I do have on my phone a token generator. I think I do. So you probably have a type of access on your device where you can do a token. There's my token generator. It's giving me a token. This is my Blizzard token generator, my BattleNet token generator that I don't have anything to log into right now because, as we mentioned in the pre-show, I'm not playing any games. But I still have the authenticator just in case someday I'm ever able to do that. That token generator is also, there could be physical token generators as well to work through. But a token generator doesn't have a certificate. There's no digital signature certificate that's created from that. That's simply a number, a pseudo-random number, because it's not truly random. It just looks random. But both sides understand the number is going to be the same, so it can check. It's a simple numbers check. That's all it is. It's not a certificate at all. We've got other options on here. For some reason, 19% of you suddenly shot up and said GPS coordinates, probably because I told you that it was going to be GPS coordinates and you jumped on it. It's not. It's not GPS coordinates at all. GPS coordinates is simply a way to determine where you happen to be. And if you're authenticating and it is something where you're trying to determine, is this person in the nearby area? Are they in the country? Are they showing up as being in a different country? Maybe we shouldn't allow them to log in because maybe that's not a legitimate login. We've got others here like a fingerprint. Fingerprint is something you are. Fingerprint is not a certificate. It's a fingerprint, thumbprint, a handprint. That's not the case at all. And then a personal identification number is something you know. The personal identification number, I'll give you mine. No, I'm not going to tell you my personal identification number. But that is a number that is in your brain. And the only way to get it out is for you to type it onto a keypad or a keyboard. And that is not a certificate either. The only option here that really is a certificate is the CAC. If you have a common access card, you work for the U.S. Department of Defense, you probably have one of these and you're already familiar with it. So that is your right answer. If you answered A, CAC, 34% of you got that one absolutely right. Isaac in the chat room, thank you for the love, showing me a little bit of the Super Chat donation. Thank you so much. Very kind of you. For those of you that you've asked occasionally, is there a way we can donate? Is there a way we can help support what you're doing? That's one of the ways that you can do it. Of course, we have all of these training materials on the site. You're welcome to purchase. But also I turned on Super Chat here as well so that you can also contribute that way. Just another one to do it. So thank you, Isaac. We do appreciate that. Let's do another question. You've now motivated me to do yet another question for all of these. So let's break through and do these. The question in the chat room before we move on, can the token generator be certificate-based? Generally, token generators are not. Token generators simply work on what most of the time, if they are a time-based token generator, based on what time of day it is. There is an algorithm that constantly updates and sets what the number should be. And both sides of the conversation know what the next number is going to be. And so when you send that number through, it's simply checking to see if the numbers match. Certificates aren't necessary. In fact, I'm not sure how you would validate with a digital signature the number that's being sent. But that's not what the pseudo-randomness is for the token generator anyway. It's simply to make sure that the number you see on your side matches the number that's on the other side. So that's the difference, is that it's really just a way to sync the number. The number I'm thinking of is 74. And you type in 74. That was the number I was thinking of. So you get access. That's as complex as a token generator really is. It looks random. It's not really random. Both sides know what's coming next. That's the difference. So let's also, Justice in the chat room, $10 donation. You rock, sir. Thank you. I do appreciate that. Very kind of you. Let's, and there is a whole section. I know in the A+, we don't go into certificates a lot, but there is a huge push on that. There's a little more in Network Plus and a lot when you get to Security Plus. So this is sort of the beginnings of you learning a little bit more about these authentication factors and how they are used. Let's do another question, but not before I thank Isaac for his another $5 donation that he put there saying, "Hi, Lori." And now I'm going to let Lori know that you said hello. Well, she'll see it in the super chat. She watches the replay when she's going through the video. So if there's anything you'd like to say to Lori, I'd like to say thank you. She'll see it as it goes by. And she will absolutely see that one, Isaac. Thank you for that $5 donation. Why is GPS continuing to go up? People keep answering that one. I don't know. It's a mystery. It's the internet. It's what happens. Next question on our list. The question asks, an application has stopped working after a recent update. Yes, it has. Which of the following would be the best first step to resolve this issue? Would it be reinstall Windows, recover from a known good backup, run SFC, run an application repair, or disable all startup services? An application has stopped working after a recent update. Which of the following would be the best first step to resolve this issue? Would it be to reinstall Windows, recover from a known good backup, run SFC, run an application repair, and disable all startup services? That's one of those, but which one is the first one we do? Well, if you'd like to answer, do not answer in the chat room. You're going to go professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer there. That's the best place to go. Yes, Lori is a big part of what we do here. If you are watching and you are getting the daily pop quiz question, and you see the pop quiz questions on Instagram, you see the pop quiz question on my website, it's there because Lori put it there. So we rely on her to get those questions to you, and she does a great job in doing that. So we're very happy about that. Or sell your computer. I don't have that option there, but that I've considered maybe a lifestyle change, and I'll just raise cows. We'll do something different than what we're doing now. In this case, though, we only have these options available to work through. So make sure you're familiar with what those options might be to have all of that. Question in the chat room, do we need to know the different / commands for the command line stuff? For some of them, for the main ones, yes. I give you what I think are the most popular options for those command lines. I know this is not a command line question, but since the question came up, we're killing time while you answer. I think knowing the most popular options are important. Now, knowing every option for every command, not important. But that's one of those situations where knowing most of the commands are the most common options on a command are what you should really focus on. I try in my videos to give you some perspective of what the most common would be. So yes, a good example, Daniel in the chat room, the DD command in Linux is just a monster. If you ever look at the man page, and that's the manual page, that's Linux speak for manual. If you go look at the manual for DD, the man space DD, boy, it would be quite a bit to go through there. Well, why not reboot? See, this is another example of where you might say the first thing you do is reboot. That's not an option here because you've been given specific instructions by this user not to reboot the system right now. See, I just gave you a reason why reboot's not on the list. So you only can do these things. These are the only things available to you. Which one would you do to resolve this issue? So let's see how you did with this one. The question again was, an application has stopped working after a recent update. Which of the following would be the best first step to resolve this issue? Would it be to reinstall Windows, recover from a known good backup, run SFC, run an application repair, or disable all startup services? How'd you answer? Well, we got quite a bit here. No majorities, but 36% of you said run an application repair is what you would do. 22% of you said reinstall Windows. Kind of a tie for third. 18 and 15% said recover from a known good backup or run SFC. And then 9% of you said to disable all startup services. Well, the real key here, the thing that is the scenario we were trying to resolve, was the application was updated and then it stopped working. Now, this happens, of course, all the time. So something during that process went awry. This is the question we always ask ourselves, of course, is it worked yesterday. Now it's working. It's not working today. So between yesterday and today, something happened. What happened? We're constantly asking this question of ourselves. What happened between yesterday and now? Well, there was an app update. Well, how can we fix that if there was an app update? I guess we could recover from a known good backup, but boy, you're having to recover now, go back into the backup somewhere, go through a recovery process. This is involved, and it could be you're overriding something that you need from that backup process. Would be a lot easier if we had a way to maybe ask the application to fix itself. And there is a way to do this in most applications. A way to do that would be to go through and have a look at the options available for this app. Usually, if you run the setup for the app again, or you go into the uninstall process for the app, it will give the option that you can modify what options are available with the application. You can repair the application, or you can remove the application. And the repair process is one that can fix a lot of problems. It effectively goes through, does a little sanity check, and go through all of those. That sanity check is going to go through and really see if all the files are there properly. Are they the right version of the files? Are the libraries registered properly? Are the executables there? These are the important things. And that repair process can sometimes resolve problems with the application. You don't have to uninstall it. You don't have to reinstall it. You don't have to install a backup or go to a backup to install additional things. You can simply ask the application itself to fix itself, and it will do that. So that is a very quick way, a very easy way, and a way that's built into the application itself to resolve issues if that application actually has those. So that means that D, run an application repair, 33% of you got that one absolutely right. That is what you should be doing. Now, there were other options in here you chose. 29% of you said reinstall Windows. And the problem is we don't know if this is a Windows problem or not. It seems that we're trying to start the application, and the application is failing. So reinstalling Windows may not even resolve the issue that we're looking at here. On top of that, we're reinstalling the entire Windows operating system, which could introduce a number of new problems into this scenario. Certainly, that is an answer that may not fix an issue and may cause others. So we're going to say no on that one. Not going to do that. The others here, recover from a known good backup was 15%. So recovering from known good backup could eventually be the result we go to. Maybe we want to go to the previous version of this app. But before we do that, let's give the application an opportunity to fix itself, since obviously there was an update. If we're going to go to a known good backup, we'll be restoring probably from an older version of this app, which might not even work then. Maybe this application has to be at the latest version and you can't run an older version. I'm looking at you, gaming companies. That's one where you don't have the choice. You can't go back and run the older version. You must be updated to the latest version. And performing a backup can also, restoring from a backup, could also overwrite some things that maybe you didn't want to overwrite. So it may not be a great answer there either. We've got running SFC, the system file checker. That's a fantastic utility to run because it will go through your operating system, the important core operating system files, and determine if any of your operating system files are corrupted. But we didn't update our operating system. Application stopped working after an application update. So running SFC is not really our issue. We don't think we changed anything with the operating system. So that's not going to be the one we're going to think about worrying with. Not really going to focus on fixing an application either. It's going to fix something happening inside of Windows. So that's not really our focus to be able to do that. And then we've got disable all startup services. Disabling those services, we don't think the problems with starting up. We didn't change anything with startup in this question. So in this particular case, this is one where I think the only really good answer here, the best answer in this list, and the one we should do first, is to run an application repair. It's quick, it's easy, it can resolve problems with a single app. That's the one we should focus on. 28% of you chose that one. If you answered D, run an application repair, you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another question. This next one, close to my heart, because it asks which of these would be the best way to protect a user's credit card information. Would that be PCI DSS? Would it be GDPR? Would it be PHI encryption? Or would it be hashing? Which of these would be the best way to protect a user's credit card information? Is it PCI DSS? Is it GDPR? Is it PHI encryption? Or is it hashing? And perhaps it is tokenization, but that is not on the 221,002 exam objectives for all of that. So that I think is an important consideration. This question, however, not the option you were thinking of. They always do that. Why is that? So we'll have to see how you do with this one. This one clearly is really wanting you to know the differences between all four of those, because all four of those are real things. So let's see if you're familiar with this, with at least what these are. There's only so many things you can go through when it deals with protecting a user's credit card information. So I'm really giving you a very high-level set of options that are there and available. Let's see how you do with those and figure out the details of that. We'll talk about what falls under what once we are done here and see if we can break out what each one of these things happens to be. Maybe this would be, if we're working through this, what would be done to have that there. And we'll talk about, Lou in the chat room is asking about my preferred distro of Linux and why. I have one for desktop and one for security and one for server. I don't have a preferred. If you're on ProfessorMesser.com right now, I'll just quickly answer, you're on CentOS. So there you go. That's my super favorite one because it's running my web server and my database server and my load balancer. And I don't know what's running on my reverse proxy. That's a mystery. So we'll have to figure those out. But that's those are all good. But for in Kali, if I'm doing security stuff, there's a quick answer for you. Let's see how you answered with this one. The question was, which of these would be the best way to protect a user's credit card information? Is that PCI DSS? Is it GDPR? Is it PHI encryption? Or is it hashing? And what did you answer? Well, we have another one where we are very torn. 37% said PCI DSS. 36% of you said hashing. 22% of you said PHI encryption. And only 5% said GDPR. GDPR got sort of thrown out there. I would think we would have latched on to that one. It's so new and trendy. If you're dealing with credit cards, if you're working for a company that takes credit cards, if you're working for a company that processes credit cards, if you're working for a company that has anything to do with credit cards, then you're probably going to, in some way, have some PCI DSS, the payment card industry data security standard that you have to know about. This is a standardized set of requirements, especially on the IT side, for protecting the card numbers, protecting the information in the cards. It becomes really, really, really important to have that there. Whenever I start going through and looking at this, and I've worked with a number of customers and setting up the firewall for PCI DSS compliance, there are so many things they have to go through. In fact, you have to bring in experts in PCI DSS to make sure that you are complying properly with PCI DSS. There have been customers I've worked with who said, yeah, we need not only one firewall, we need two firewalls, and we need it from different manufacturers. And I thought, who's telling you this? Because nobody else is doing that. But that's what the auditor said, and that's what they have to do. But look at these objectives. How to build, maintain secure networks and systems, protect cardholder data, maintain vulnerability management program, implement strong access control measures, regularly monitor and test networks, and maintain an information security policy. Seems easy enough, except it's an enormous task to be able to do this. This is why if you ever go to the ProfessorMesser.com website, I don't take your credit card number. You are redirected over to whatever service you were choosing to use. If you choose PayPal, you're redirected to PayPal. If you choose credit card on my site, you're redirected to Stripe, which is a very well-known and very well-trusted credit card provider, credit card processor. And I pass you over there. And by doing that, I avoid having to deal with PCI DSS because I don't keep your credit card number. I don't want your credit card number. And they don't let me see your credit card number either. So great. They are PCI DSS compliant though on both of those, because I don't work with anybody who isn't. So that is the one we were looking for, is the PCI DSS. That protects a user's credit card information. What about these others though? 40% of you said hashing. I thought hashing did this. The problem with hashing is it's a good way to validate that I typed in the right credit card number, but you can't get the credit card number out of the hash. Once you create a hash is a fingerprint. And just like you couldn't create a whole person from their fingerprint, you can't create a credit card number from a hash of a credit card number. So that's the problem that you run into, is hashing can only be used to maybe validate that you have typed in the right number, but it doesn't actually protect a user's credit card information, because there's no credit card information in a hash at all. So definitely not the right answer on this one to be able to work through, at least not the best way. Now, are there implementations of a hash that can help you in a credit card application deal with some type of validation or digital signatures? Or yeah, we could probably start stacking on a number of what ifs there. But the question asked for the best way, and hashing by itself, given the other options available, is not the best way. That PCI DSS should have just jumped right out at you when you saw credit cards. PHI encryption is your personal health information. PHI health information. Health information would be your health records. It's knowing, it's having the ability for your doctor to be able to see which version of the vaccine you took, but it doesn't have any information in there about credit cards. Doesn't help you at all. So that's one of those that you will run into, that situation where PHI encryption, great for protecting your healthcare information, doesn't do anything to protect your credit card. And GDPR, this data recovery, or really what the EU says, the right to be forgotten, although it technically did not turn out to be that way. That regulation, the data privacy regulation in the UK, or the EU rather, all of the EU, not just the UK, is one that helps organization, or helps you as a consumer, determine how other organizations are using your data. And it works exceptionally well in the EU. And if someone does send me GDPR requests to professormesser.com and I'm in a position to act on those, I do delete users' accounts if they ask that. However, in the US, I am required to keep financial information for a certain amount of time, and I can't delete everything on my site. Boy, the IRS would not like me. That is our Internal Revenue Service. And they want to make sure that I'm paying them the right amount of money, so I can't necessarily delete everything from my site, but I can create some types of deletion if there's something that hasn't been purchased. So GDPR, I guess useful for the EU, has technically no legal standing outside of the EU, although most of the rest of the people in the world at least try to play along with it as best we can, because it's a good idea if we're able to implement it that way. We just don't build our systems for the GDPR requirements. Well, it's a long story, but that's at least something that's an option. So you can always do that. In this particular question, though, the answer that really circumvents everything else that's here, it's much larger than any of the other possible answers here, is the PCI DSS. 35% of you chose that. That is the right answer. While we were talking, Anthony in the chat room, $10 donation. Thank you so much. We do appreciate that. Appreciate the love. And Isaac, also in the chat room, $2 to remind me to tell you that if you would like to earn CEU credit for watching this 1 hour of a webinar category CEU, I will send you an email that confirms that you watch this, but you have to follow these instructions to earn the email. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click the Contact Us link. It brings you to a form. Put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, put that this is the April 2021 Core 2 study group. Something where I can at least recognize what we're talking about. And then on a line by itself, in that body of that message, put the super secret code word of the month, GDPR. For those of you, I've gotten some emails lately that said I was talking badly about the GDPR. I did not mean to talk badly about it, even though it doesn't apply to me. The GDPR is the super secret code word of the month. So there, I'll give it a little bit of love. GDPR. The GDPR, put that in there. And then if you want to put anything else in there as well, you're more than welcome to. I read through every single one of those emails. So you're welcome to put everything in there. I can't necessarily respond back to all of these emails, but I do try to at least, or I do read through every single one of them. I just can't send messages back. So that is your super secret code word of the month. It takes me about a week to process these, sometimes faster, sometimes lower, but I do send those emails out with a digital signature. Now, if you have no idea, and like VB in the chat room says, what are you talking about? What's a CEU? This doesn't apply to you. But a continuing education unit is what that is, and it's for people that need to renew their CompTIA certifications. So one of the many ways that you could renew your CompTIA certification is by doing that. Well, let's do one more question. We aren't done yet. I know it's top of the hour, but we'll get to more of another question in just a moment. We'll absolutely do this. But I do want to mention to you, if you like these questions and you're wondering, am I really ready to take my exam? You may want to consider looking over my practice exams. I have created 3 practice exams that are 90 questions in length, 5 performance-based questions, and 85 multiple-choice-based questions. And I give you extensive details about these answers. This is my practice exams book. And let's do one since we're here. A user in the accounting department. No, we already know that one. We already talked about that today. Here's a good one. A student would like to prevent the theft of their laptop while studying at the library. Which of the following security methods would be the best choice to protect this laptop? Would it be biometrics, locking cabinet, USB token, or cable lock? So I have a PDF reader here that I can annotate. So let's say I think it's biometrics or whatever it happens to be. I can mark that on my screen if I would like. Or if I just want to jump right to the answer, there are these links on the side that say quick answer, and the details are hot links. So I've got this digital version. I'm going to click on the details, which speeds me up to the page 45 or so. And I have these, it gives me the same question at the top. The answer, though, cable lock was the right answer. And then I give you information on why that is the right answer. I explain to you on every single correct answer why I think that was the correct answer. Now, the problem, of course, is that I don't ever get these right. I always get these wrong. And I want to know when I get it wrong, why did I get this wrong? So for every single one of these answers, I give you the incorrect answers and I explain to you why I think that answer was incorrect. So I chose A, biometrics. And I said biometrics such as fingerprints or face scanning is useful for preventing access through a door or to an operating system. However, biometrics won't stop someone from physically taking a laptop from a table. That's why this would not be the right answer. And I do that for every wrong answer in the book. Now, if you still at that point are thinking, I need a little more information about this, at the very bottom, I put a QR code and links that will take you to my website, and you can watch the video that talks about the topic and the question, which in this case was physical security. So there's many ways that you could get more details on that. That's available for every single question in here. Now, when I'm done in my PDF reader, I can click the back button and I can just go to the next one. We'll go to question 10 and we'll just keep this going. That's all in my practice exams book. If you like that, there's plenty more in there. I have practice exams available for both Core 1 and Core 2. You can find out more information at professormesser.com/core2PE, the PE for practice exams. All out there. Let's do another question. I've got another one here. This one asks, if I flip it over so you can see it in your question and answer, a Windows computer is configured with WOL. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this configuration? Would it be nightly backups, application prioritization, content filtering, or wireless authentication? A Windows computer is configured with WOL. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this configuration? Would it be nightly backups, application prioritization, content filtering, or wireless authentication? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what that thing is that I'm talking about and figuring this out. Yeah, you'll notice that the practice exams book for Network Plus is really missing from the website. There are plans to include a practice exam book for Network Plus probably later this year. You'll see one later this year. It'll be very useful. Have that there. That's where we can focus on this and have all of those available. The Network Plus stuff is, that's one of those situations. If you're ever in a situation where your Network Plus, you're needing more Q&A, there's always the Take 10 on my site, professormesser.com/take10. There's plenty of Network Plus questions there to go by. So that might help you as well to have all of that there. I think this is a good question because two reasons. First, all four of these things are topics covered in the exam objectives, so you need to know a lot about them. But the other part of this is that it's asking about a type of technology that is listed in the exam objectives. And not only talking about the technology, all you get is an abbreviation, is WOL. So that's one of those where I mentioned multiple steps in a question to get to finally understanding what answer you need to take. That's one of those examples, is to have that there. So maybe that will help you as well. We'll have to see if this is. Whenever I start looking at these, this at least only has 4 answers on it. So you might, in this case, be able to, to at least go through each one of those and figure out the details. Maybe you will. I think that's what it is. I'll have to break those things apart and see. Yeah, I do have a Network Plus study group next week. So there are some folks there that are looking for the Network Plus content. We'll go through tons of Network Plus next week. It's on Wednesday of next week. You can always check the calendar on the Professor Messer website for more details. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a Windows computer is configured with WOL. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this configuration? Would it be nightly backups, application prioritization, content filtering, or wireless authentication? 47% of you said nightly backups. We've got 30% that said wireless authentication, and then kind of a tie for third between application prioritization and content filtering. Well, 48% is a pretty good number there to be able to work through that. And the 48% of you that said nightly backups, I think we're spot on. The WOL is a feature within your network interface card. The network interface card most of them have the capability to, when your system is sleeping, when it's on standby, one of the things that you could do is send a specially crafted packet to the computer that will wake it up, effectively turning it on when the user is not there. It's called Wake on LAN, and it wakes it up and gets it running again. This was specifically created so that system administrators can do things like perform patches of the operating system at 3 in the morning when users are sleeping. So you can go home, send all your users home, just make sure that, maybe even tell them, just keep your system on. It'll probably go into standby mode if you don't touch it for an hour. And then it goes into standby mode. And then you've set up an automated process at 3 in the morning because you're not awake either. And at 3 in the morning, it sends out this special Wake on LAN packet, wakes up all the computers, and then performs the backup, the update, the file transfer, or whatever it is you're doing there at 3 in the morning. And then if nothing happens for another period, another interval, turns itself off again, goes back into standby mode. Wake on LAN is that feature, and what a nice feature it is, because if you have that available, you can perform nightly backups when nobody is there to turn the system on. 49% of you that chose nightly backups, that's what you were thinking, and you were absolutely thinking the right thing. We've got wireless authentication, and wireless authentication, although useful, and W is in the name, the W there is for wake and not for wireless. Normally for wireless authentication, we're usually thinking about 802.1q. Maybe we're thinking about WPS. Maybe that's what you were thinking about, or WPA. One of those. So some more options there, but definitely not Wake on LAN. 12% of you said application prioritization. You were probably thinking QoS, quality of service, and not WOL. So QoS has the same lowercase o in the middle. See what I did there? So not quite what we were looking for there. Application prioritization is not something that WOL, Wake on LAN, can help you with. And content filtering, Wake on LAN won't help you with that either. Content filtering, a URL filter, for example, something that is there. This is a feature that it has to be part of the BIOS that you're using. So there's a motherboard component to this, but Wake on LAN has been a standard for so long. I think it's probably built into the UEFI standard, and it was available even before that as well. So now it's just a normal part of your BIOS. It's available in practically any system you're using these days. The operating system has to support it. Windows has supported it forever, so that's not a problem. And the device driver for your network card has to support it as well, and most network cards do. The ones that are set up for something that would be inside of a user's workstation or server, absolutely it supports that as well. It's hard to find a device that doesn't support WOL at this point because it is just so useful. And that's one of the reasons we created it, so that we would have that usefulness. We would have that feature available for the system administrators. You don't want to have a system that doesn't have it, because then no one will purchase that system to use in a business. So everything has it as part of these systems. This is quite a bit. We've gone through quite a number of questions here in this first hour. This, I think, is a pretty good one to end on in this first hour. We have more questions for you coming up in the after show. But of course, all of this content came from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you get your hands on these objectives. They are an incredibly important piece of information for your studies. It should be the first thing you read as you start your studies. It should be the last thing you reference before you take your exam. Make sure you're familiar with the exam objectives, and they're free. You can get them. A link on my website will take you over to the CompTIA website. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, and you'll be able to find that. Plenty to go through with those pieces. We have more study groups available. We're only part of the way through April at this point. I have a Network Plus study group on the 14th, a Security Plus study group on the 21st, and then in May, on the 4th and the 6th, are our next A Plus study groups. You can find those on the 4th and the 6th. I have Network Plus next month on May 12th and Security Plus on May 19th. Of course, all of these dates can change. Sometimes life happens and things go on in my world. So always check in on the calendar to find out when the next event is going to be. I update the calendar always. It's the first thing I do when a date changes. So go to professormesser.com/calendar if you ever want to confirm when that next live event is going to be. Before we go, I'll also remind you about my course notes. These are really a summary of everything that's in every single video. There's both physical and digital versions of the course notes. So all of those command line prompts, everything dealing with understanding the functionality of an operating system, all of those charts that I have in all of my videos, they're in there. Everything is in there. So that's where you would want to go, to professormesser.com/1000 notes. Well, we've been through at least an hour of content for this, and we're not done yet. Stick around for the after show, where instead of me asking you questions, you're going to ask me questions. So we'll figure out what the options might be. Don't forget about the practice exams and the course notes on my website, professormesser.com/1001success. Don't forget about the vouchers. You're going to need a voucher eventually to take these exams. And why not get discounted vouchers on my site along with my exam hacks ebook? You can find it at professormesser.com/vouchers. Of course, don't forget about the daily pop quiz questions on Twitter and on Instagram. Go to professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/Instagram. And don't forget about the YouTube channel. Be a great place for you to subscribe and show my friends at YouTube that you really do like this content. They are watching, interestingly enough. I just got an email from my YouTube representative yesterday. So they are checking in with me, making sure everything's good. And they like to see that you think things are going well as well. Thanks for being here in this first hour. Thanks for joining us for the Q&A. Stick around for the after show. That's where it gets really interesting after all. And thank you for being here. We'll see you next time on the A Plus Study Group. It's so quiet. What happens now? Well, now I have to push a bunch of buttons, put myself back on the screen, and I need to get the call-in line set up. So if you would tolerate me just a moment going in and getting these running, I'm going to do so. Let me log into my cloud-based system where I can host a show, and then I will show you and explain how you can join in as well onto the show. Let me start these things up. It's a little slower than normal today. Now I need to start my Skype, which I didn't do earlier. What's the worst thing that can happen? I was doing some rendering prior to this. I rebooted everything, and of course, there's those things you forget to do after the reboot. Now we're going to call into our show. So bear with me just one moment, and I'm going to type a few things in and see if the nice lady asks me for something.
Enter your 6-digit PIN.
I will absolutely do that if I can remember what this 6-digit PIN might be.
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Thanks, nice lady. That means that you can participate while we're here. Oh, you know what I haven't done is change the graphic out. See that? There's always one more thing because it's live, people. It's the way it works. Let's get that running. As a matter of fact, I need to put the phone lines up on the screen, which would allow you to see. There it is. If you're here in the continental United States, you can call a toll-free number to get into this phone line at 855-785-RJ45. You can also call in in the United States, 855-785-7545. Now, if you're outside of the U.S., you can still call in for free. You can do this on Skype because Skype does not require any Skype minutes to call a toll-free number. I pay for it on my side. So you just put a +1 at the beginning, +1, 855-785-7545, and you'll be put in the queue. I'm also taking questions from the chat room. So we'll look at some of those as well and step through all of the ones that we have there. There were a number of questions that went through earlier, a number of questions people were asking earlier regarding operating systems and what I ran. And indeed, I spoke earlier that I run CentOS on my server, and that is generally one of the best ones to use for the type of thing I'm doing for this web service I'm running. Certainly not the only option, but a good one because it's built on Red Hat, or at least it was at one time. But the current version, at least I'm running, is. So we've got at least that option available. That's primarily why I'm running it. But there's a lot of other options out there if you're ever in a case where you're trying to figure out which type of Linux operating system you want to run. There's so many different options. For example, if you're going to be watching my Security Plus study group, Security Plus has a number of options on it to be able to run some different apps. I do almost everything there in Kali. So that's probably, from a security perspective, one of the best ones to use. It comes in handy. That's the one I would work through, is those. That's probably, if you are ever in a case to find yourself doing something security related, it's just a very capable, very comprehensive type of Linux distribution, that Kali distribution. It's a good one to go to for doing almost all of those. Works there as well. For those of you asking about getting experience, one of the things I mentioned in my video about how to get a job in IT with no experience, which is the hardest part. It's getting that first job in IT. And I tell you that you need a formal education of some kind. You need industry certification. You need some type of experience and of some kind. I realize it may not be professional experience where you are paid. And you need, at best, somebody who works there. Now, that's your best option. Now, if you can get all 4 of those, that's the best thing you can do. Now, if you can get 3 of those and not the 4th, well, you can still try. I mean, you've still got a chance, but your best scenario would be to have all 4 of those. So for those of you in the chat room, Raider Mac asked, any suggestion for volunteer work so that you can get experience? I give some suggestions in that video so that you can at least have some places to go. There are a number of websites that have volunteer type things listed. Sometimes you can volunteer with places that you already know people. So maybe at a church, maybe at a nonprofit that you either work at or know people who work there. They love to have people come in and volunteer. And it can be something as simple as making sure their antivirus is up to date. It's remarkable how many systems you walk up to that have nobody working with them. and the antivirus that's on there has expired. It's not been updated in a year. They haven't turned on Windows Defender. That's a great opportunity, not only for you to learn a little more about their environment, what they're using, the problems they're having, but also keep them safer, keep these systems running so they're not hit with ransomware. They're not got a virus on them. Or you may be spending some time removing viruses. That may be what you end up doing by volunteering. And that is a set of skills that you will use throughout your career. So that's another one to help. If you're ever working through the process of trying to find somewhere to volunteer, you will eventually find yourself in the middle of an antivirus/virus repair scenario. And that is where it really does come in handy to know how to work through these the easiest way possible. Otherwise, it'll take you forever to work through all of those types of systems. Let's go to the phone lines, to the 773 area code. Hi, caller. Which name were you calling from? I hear me.
Good afternoon, Professor Messer. This is Joe from Chicago.
Hello, Joe. How are things in Chicago?
Well, fine, thank you, sir. But they have raining today. It was yesterday 70 degrees. Today is raining.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you calling. What can we do for you?
Sir, my question is, first of all, I really appreciate all your study groups, which are really unique and they're just fantastic. Also, sir, in case a person has got an idea about adding a few or new feature to mobile phones that could become very handy to many people, how would you go about this idea? I mean, how would you protect it, and how do you produce this idea, add it to the capabilities of the mobile phone?
This is a very hot part of the market, of course, is mobile technologies and what you can do with them. And there are mobile technologies that have been added through the years that are hardware related. Just the glass that is on the front of our phones is a very specific kind of glass. The type of circuitry we have inside of our phones for accelerometers, for understanding the GPS technologies, for working with the Bluetooth and the NFC, and all of these are in here. And on top of that, there's the software running on our mobile phones and creating new apps for these devices. You find the right app that fits the right segment, that has the right hook, that becomes popular, can be very profitable as well. So I guess the question, it's a very broad question you're asking, which is how to get these things implemented and put these in here. For hardware, it's a little more difficult because you have to have at least some support from the manufacturer to be able to do that. There are patents involved. I am not the person to ask regarding patent law, which is why even in my very minor business state, I even divert to my lawyer for all copyright related issues. Am I doing this right? Am I protecting my copyright? Are we doing those things? Patent is a completely different animal altogether. I have some knowledge of the process because I used to work for some very large companies where we would submit patents and have those patents approved and be able to promote that as part of what we were doing in that company. But it's a very complex and highly litigated area. So maybe that's why I've intentionally stayed away from it, because it seems like more of a lawyer's game than it is a technologist's game, and that may be true to some degree. The other part of it, though, I think is an opportunity for everybody, which is the software on these devices. And if you have a good idea for a piece of software that solves a problem, fits a particular niche, allows functionality that people didn't have before, there is a huge market there to be able to pull from. And if you're someone who is either wanting to learn how to develop applications for these platforms, or you already have some programming knowledge, and maybe on the computer science side, this is something you'd like to do. You'd like to start your own software company and write your own applications. So at one point, that's what I was doing, sort of as a secondary job, as I was writing my own software and selling my own software. That's absolutely a viable alternative, especially given the number of phones that are out there these days. So what's nice about that is that's not really a patent issue so much as it is a copyright issue. And there are, of course, challenges to making sure that your intellectual property is protected with those apps, because there are plenty of people and organizations out there that are willing to copy a profitable app and try to take that money for themselves, which just brings in a whole nother set of legal issues. But there is some opportunity there to be made. And I think if you're someone who's knowledgeable in software, or you're an interest in writing that software, what a great place to go. It's things we just didn't even have the option available to us, 10, 15 years ago. So now we do. And it may be a place where somebody, that's all they do for the rest of their career is write apps for the mobile devices. I think anybody should be able to jump on that and see what they can do with it, Joe.
Yes, Mr. Professor, but as you know, most of the mobile phones are written in Android. And according to some people, Android is an open source. Can you be able to write a software you think that would add as a extra feature to this to the Android, program for the mobile phones? And how do you create a situation so you could test it? I mean, it gets complicated. I don't want to, change the matter, but do you think it's possible?
Well, the good part about Android, I guess one of the good parts about Android is it's very open in how you are able to see what's going on inside of the operating system. But although the operating system of Android has a good portion of it associated with open source, the applications you would write for it would not be open source, or for most of us would not be open source applications. And most of the apps you will find for Android and for iOS are proprietary apps that are not open source, that someone does not have access to the source code. So that is the place where I'm sort of talking to people and saying that's a place where you can really be successful from a business perspective, is with those apps. And since you don't have to worry about someone seeing your source code, you can simply install the software on the phone and have them use it and pay you for it. I think it's a good opportunity.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, Professor, and have a lovely day, and be safe.
Thank you. You too, Joe. I appreciate it. And thanks for your calls. So nice to hear back from time and time again for people doing that. These apps on mobile phones, they have their advantages and disadvantages. Some folks have mentioned in the chat room that, hey, you don't have an app. I have worked with some third parties to create apps in the past. I am not an app developer, nor do I want to be. And part of the challenge, and Joe sort of spoke to this a bit, is if I create an app, I would at least have to write the app for Android and for iOS if I really want to cover the bases. This is one of the big reasons why my practice exams I publish as a PDF, because everybody can read a PDF, whether you're on Android or iOS or Mac OS or Windows or Linux or a bunch of other operating systems as well. It's a very common and very open way to get information to people. Maybe someday, if the right thing works out, I can get a type of Q&A or online app that we could use with these. But right now, I'm not interested in having all of those different apps. And now you have to support the app. What if the app doesn't work? What if it's broken? Well, there's a whole bunch of other things around there that as a PDF, I don't have to worry about that. PDF doesn't break so much. It just works, which is great for me. And it works out well. But in the future, who knows? I take my suggestions from what you want. So that's what I consider creating it as an EPUB, probably not. The EPUB format doesn't quite fit what we're trying to do with it. I think a lot of people want an EPUB so they can put it on their mobile reader, their book reader, ebook reader, like Kindle. Well, the Kindle format doesn't really work very well either for the type of content I create. It's great for a novel, but it's not good at all for course notes, and it's barely useful for doing something like the practice exams. It just doesn't work very well, not the way I want it to work, and I'm very picky about what I'm expecting from this. I don't want it to work good enough. I want it to be perfect in the experience that it's providing, and it's not perfect enough for me yet. Yes, there are levels of perfection, and it's not perfect enough yet. Let's go back to the phones to Florida number 386 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Professor. I am Samuel. I'm calling from Deltona, Florida. How are you today?
Hey, Samuel. How are things?
Things are going well. Just putting one foot in front of the other, and keeping an attitude of gratitude.
That's all
Thank
you can
for
do.
Taking my call.
I appreciate you calling. What can we do for you?
Okay, so currently I passed my Core 1 exam, and I'm currently working on my Core 2.
Great.
I have a plan to get entry-level help desk role by the end of this year. And just thinking about the opportunities in my area, like what they pay and just the overall transition. I know I'm going to have to take a pay cut to do the career change. My question is IT a field where you can work a second job on top of your 9-to-5 IT job, or is it a type of field where it requires so much of your time you have to go in, you have to focus on it completely? My concern is that, people that I've spoken to in the field, burnout is very easy. You have your 9-to-5, and then you have your self-study to keep up and stay relevant and competitive. And just I have to work a second job just to make ends meet, for my dream. So I'm just trying to think that through.
Well, you do have a number of options available. There, some of your challenges are absolutely spot on with, especially when moving from one type of job or one type of industry into IT. There are all of those things you have to worry about. You do have to worry about taking a pay cut. Usually, when you've worked in one type of industry for a while, you start to make some money, and then you decide, this is not working out for me. I really want to move from transportation, medicine, whatever it happens to be, and move it into IT. Well, now you have to start at the bottom again and work your way back up. That's sort of the nature of every line of work that you would run into. The benefit I often say, and I promote this heavily, is that although you have to start at the bottom regardless of what you do next, moving up in IT can happen relatively quickly compared to other industries. So once you are in and you really apply yourself and you get those next certifications and you network with the right people and you keep your head up and on a swivel and watch what's going on around you, you can move up very, very rapidly in this industry relative to other places where you might go. So that part, I think, there's value there. And I tell people, don't worry, you won't be at the bottom very long. If you're someone you've already been through the mill before, you know how this works, you're going to get down there and you're going to work hard and you're going to move up very quickly and find other things that really, really interest you to do. So there's pain there associated with that, though, and I recognize that. There's also this challenge of geography. You're in a not really a bad area for that. There is quite a bit of technology in your area in Lake Mary. There's a little bit in the Daytona side, but certainly more down closer to Orlando. I mean, you got huge facilities and plenty of technology in that Lake Mary area, and more happening all the time. And there's some places where you may be able to do that. But I like you sort of brought up a strategy that, well, maybe I can do what I'm doing now, but sort of work the IT side as the second job. And there may be opportunities for that. They are fewer and farther between, however. IT tends to be not so much a 9-to-5 or during a set of times as some of the others. Although help desk is probably the one part of IT that would allow you to do that, where you, and especially right now that we're doing so much remotely, we're doing it we're working from home for a lot of what we're doing for IT, and they could set you up in your help desk setup. So you might work the second shift. So you could work your primary shift during the day, I used to do this with Professor Messer. I would be the systems engineer during the day. I would go out and tell people how awesome this next generation firewall is and demonstrate it and plug it in and do evaluations and talk to customers and deal with tech support and do the things I normally do during the day and training and keep myself up and travel and all that. And then when I get into the hotel room at night, because I was usually traveling, I would spend all of my nighttime hours getting room service, grabbing a sandwich somewhere, bringing it back to the room, and just working on Professor Messer stuff until I exhausted fell into bed. And then we just do the next thing the next day. So there is some jobs out there for help desk that are second tier or second shift help desks. That may be something you can look at. There's a lot more, of course, jobs where you do need to be available during business hours. So it's going to be more of a challenge for you to find those second shift help desks, but they are out there. Maybe you just have to do a little more research to find them. I think because we're able to do our remote help now from home, you may actually be in a better place to be able to find those jobs than you ever were before. Now you can practically work anywhere at any time as long as the job allows you to do that. So probably I don't know of any positions for that particular area or that are advertising in your particular area for that. But given all of the different options that have been available through the years, you picked a really good time to try to do something like that, because now more than ever, those jobs are available. It's just going to take a little bit of research. Check with LinkedIn Jobs, check with dice.com, check whatever your favorite job posting service happens to be. See what's out there. At least make a list of what jobs might be available so you can at least get in your mind, wow, there's more jobs here than I thought, or there's fewer jobs here than I thought. And at least you'd have an idea of where to go with that. It's a great plan. And if you still need some money while you're trying to get up to speed in IT, that may be a pretty good option for you. You can get some practical experience, at the same time still keep the day job, and then eventually decide, okay, now it's time to make the jump, because we've now got our feet in the door with IT. We've moved up to a certain level. Now they want me at layer 2 of the help desk, or they want me to move into workstation management or networking or whatever it happens to be. Then you can make that decision. It becomes less of a financial issue and more of a timing issue. And maybe that fits with what you're trying to do, Samuel.
All right. That sounds like a plan. So thank you. I don't have a list of jobs per se. I have more of a list of businesses. I know there's Deloitte in Lake Mary. There's a Spectrum office in Orlando. There's a Assurian in the like a touristy area. So like you said, there are definitely like different like jobs like out there. I think like right now, I think I really need to focus on passing my A plus and getting that before really applying for jobs.
I agree. I think before you do anything, I think that's a great strategy. And it used to be that AT&T had a pretty significant help desk in Lake Mary. That's another place to put in your list. I'm not sure if that's the same way. It's been years since I've been up there, but that's another good one to look into.
All right, wonderful. All right, thank you so much for your insight, sir.
Best of luck, Samuel.
Yes, thank you, sir. Take care.
Stay safe. That's one of those where it's very regional. It's very specific to the geography. Folks in the chat room were even saying, IT in Orlando's blowing up right now. And it is. My son is in Orlando getting his cloud computing degree. And I'm so happy, first, that he's in Orlando. It's hard to get a place to live in Orlando right now. It is off, just blowing up with people moving there. So it's hard to find a living arrangement in Orlando. And he has one. So that's good. And I really feel like once he graduates, cloud computing, certainly there's got to be a job in Orlando for cloud computing. So that's one of those you would run into. Any large geography right now, Daniel in the chat room is asking, what about New Jersey, New York? Any large geography right now is really a good place to be, because I just in general, IT is really doing well right now. unlike a lot of other industries, we were very fortunate during this entire shutdown and returning things back on that IT was a huge part of this. Not only just the part we had to set everybody up at home and get the VPNs running, but now we realized, wow, a lot of what we're doing has to have the IT part of it under the surface. So a lot of hiring going on. Check your area. If you're not already just really familiar with dice.com, LinkedIn Jobs, whatever your favorite is. I don't know if monster.com is really what it used to be, but those are the places people go. And there's many, many more. Go to those websites that are hot in your area and look at the job postings. If you aren't already familiar with those sites and you don't have a spreadsheet of all the jobs being offered right now that would apply to you, you aren't as prepared as you should be. Go make that spreadsheet today. It takes an hour. Take an hour, carve it out, just make a simple spreadsheet showing the job, where it is, what the formal education is they want, what certifications they'd like to see, what other specialties they want. Because sometimes they want you knowledgeable in Windows, but not necessarily have a certification in Windows. Do they want you to know Windows? Do they want you to know PGP? Do they want you to know spreadsheets? Do they want you to know web? Whatever it is, make a list of those. And then other things that might help you. Do you know somebody who works there? Do you have a cousin? Do you have a mother of a cousin of a friend who works there? Use those connections. Go to LinkedIn, see all the people that you're connected to on LinkedIn, then who they're connected to and who they're connected to, and see if one of those people works there. And then start asking through that chain, hey, can you introduce me to this person? And then introduce me to this person and introduce me to that person. And then I can ask them about, hey, I'm interested. I've been looking at your company. You got some openings there. Do you think this would be a good thing to do? And then in the interview, you get to say, yeah, I spoke with Bob in accounting, and he told me all about you guys and how awesome it was. This is great. That's that fourth thing you need, which is someone who works there. You don't have to have sleepovers. You don't have to go to their kids' parties. You don't have to be personal. You just have to be an acquaintance. You have to be a professional acquaintance with who that is. So that's the thing I think would really do you very, very well if you were working through that. Let's go back to the phones. International number. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
It's Sesetu. I'm calling from South Africa.
Thank you for calling. What's your question?
I'm in IT, particularly right now trying to get certified for A+ and the N+.
Great.
However, I've had some experience doing that for over 3 years right now without certification or any of those things. So right now, I was wondering if it would be okay if I went in down straight to write the exam and get out, because I've got confidence since I've started following your group and your page for quite a year right now, including Mayors and all the others, McRollan books and everything in between. Just trying to catch up with the times, because I learned a long time ago that CompTIA A+, N+, and Security Plus will now move. Mostly each runs for about 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. So now the bitter pill about it is that I've self-studied these things even before I knew there would be an opportunity for a job for me to get started. And in my workplace, I've been doing the same things which their IT department is not really aware of in terms of remote assistance, desktop, network troubleshooting, PC repairs. I'm talking softwares, Microsoft Office suite.
Wow.
Websites, and I've been looking into trying to see if I can do programming and try to develop some apps, as that I've seen is a possibility for the company in terms of where their IT department is growing. However, I haven't had an opportunity to work in that type of segment because I'm in retail, but I've more experience in the world side of IT, and my IT experience has only been working in the retail part of the side. So I'm now trying to figure out the transition between going from the side of IT fully completely or using retail to step up my ladder is the way forward.
I think you've got the right idea, which is You've got some fundamental knowledge in the technology, things you even worked with in the past. The problem is that somebody looking your resume sees your last job and sees, well, that's not an IT job, but there's knowledge there that you have to bring to the table. And I think your idea of getting the certifications is the thing that should at least turn people's heads and might give people the idea, oh, wait a second, even though he is doing this now day to day, he does have knowledge in operating systems and hardware. He does understand networking, or he does understand the security piece. And that's where, if you're ever working through these, having those certifications on your resume will let the hiring manager know, no, I really not only know these things, I have an interest in these things, which from a hiring manager perspective, it's always good to know that somebody wants that. They're hungry to get that technology job and be able to work on it. That's what we're looking for. I'd do two things. I would recommend that you go to the my channel on YouTube and go to the video on how to get a job in IT with no experience, specifically the section that talks about getting experience or experiences that you can either put on your resume or talk about when you are in front of somebody for a job. For example, I talk about in the video that if you're going into a job where they are asking you a lot about Active Directory, they want you to be familiar with the Windows Server or administering users in a Windows environment. Well, that's not something you do on Windows 10 at home. You don't have Active Directory at home. So I talk about how you could go to Microsoft. They have 60-day versions of Windows Server that you can download and install. Go through the process of installing it in a virtual machine, set it up, understand everything it takes to get that running, then connect your machine to the Active Directory environment and deal with all of the problems in setting that up and getting a user connected. Fortunately, there's tons of YouTube videos that will step you through doing this. And then once you have that, be able to really go through the process of remembering and maybe even writing down what problems did you run into when doing this? What challenges did you have to troubleshoot? What issues were really a problem with the installation, DNS, and why it took so long to get these running. But then once you did, here's all the things that were able to work once you got the problems fixed. There's a whole 10-minute conversation you can have with a hiring manager about the things you've done with Active Directory, and you're not someone who has a job dealing with Active Directory, and you've already set it up at home. You've already connected stations to it. Maybe at that point you start setting up some global policies so that you can start setting restrictions on a workstation. And I have some pretty old Windows 7 videos on my channel that describe setting up Active Directory and setting up these policies, and I implement them, and you actually see it in real time as I start setting up restrictions and how it looks on the workstation when I do that. And there's other videos on YouTube that can step you through that as well. Those types of very practical labs that you're doing at home that are driven more around, this is interesting, what happens if I do this? Those are great things to have in your pocket as stories that you can then talk to somebody about and prove to them, I really am interested in this technology. Who else do you know that did this crazy thing? And let me tell you what I found whenever I did this crazy thing. Those are good things to have, and maybe that can help you too as you're stepping through it.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on there. So hopefully that could help you as you step through that. Maybe also if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to figure out what do I do next, there's always something to do next. I give an example of 2 or 3 different types of home lab setups. And if you're ever on Reddit, go to the home lab subreddit and see what people are setting up. It dwarfs some of the things that I have here in my studio and the things that they are setting up there. But it often deals with setting up a Linux machine, setting up an open NAS on Linux, or setting up some other type of Linux app and becoming familiar with the Linux operating system. So when you walk into the interview, you can tell them all the things you've done with Active Directory. Oh yeah, and by the way, I got all this Linux stuff over here too that I've worked through. And boy, the things I had to do to get that running, let me tell you some war stories. and you go through that too. I think all of those might help you. Best of luck with that. It's always a challenge to be in that position, and maybe you can get to that point to have those stories. We should all have these stories. You should all have the war stories, because that is the hardest thing to get across to a hiring manager. And especially if you're just starting out, I already know that if I'm going to go to an interview where I want to be a systems engineer again and work in security, I'm going to have all my stories ready to go. But when you're at a help desk position, this is often your first job. The hiring manager often isn't expecting those. And then you show up with them. It's like having additional certifications in your pocket because you've actually done it. And you can talk and have great stories about those things. And hopefully the hiring manager will understand what the heck you're talking about. Even if they don't, I think it's useful. Back to the phones, the 302 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm Jaden. I'm technically from PA, but it's a Delaware.
Well, thanks for calling. What's your question?
Yeah. So I just turned 19 yesterday, and I'm in a gap year, and I'm interested in doing cybersecurity or entering like some type of IT or IT security field, like as a profession. But I'm kind of young, so I'm just starting out with A+. But I do plan to go to college in the fall, and I do know it's important to get like work experience, along with certifications. Although certifications are good, I know a big part of it is like getting some experience in real world settings. But I guess I'm a little bit worried about studying for certifications now, and I might go to college for 4 years, so it's kind of hard to get a full-time like 9 to 5 thing while you're there. I'm wondering, is there like part-time kind of options to get experience while I can still be in school and maybe do more in the summer, and still like not forget everything I learned during this gap year, I guess?
There might be. And one of the things I find that are useful for someone who is getting into college, you're in that time where you're transitioning into a college role. A lot of us, when we go to college, we're just trying to find a job to make some kind of money. You know, we're just trying, we'll work at the pizza place. We're happy with that. When I went to college, I got a part-time job working in the computing center. Now, that was at the time when there were, enormous air-conditioned rooms of mainframes, but we've effectively just transitioned to large air-conditioned rooms of microcomputers. That's what really this changed into, of machines running VMs. And there may be some data centers in your area that need somebody to work in an operations role, which is sort of a help desk role, but kind of specific to data centers. And just, you're more of a babysitter. Just, you're sitting in the room, you're making sure that no red lights turn on, you're making sure the printers are still printing, or whatever, maybe they have a plotter or whatever they've got running there. You're making sure it still operates. And if something breaks, if an air conditioner stops working, if the water cooling system stops working, you have a list of numbers you call, and those people fix it. So you're very much just a very simplified phone person. You check to see if a light turns on, and you call people if there's a problem. There are jobs like that out there that for me in college was great, because I could study while I'm waiting for lights to turn red. There's a lot of downtime. So especially at night, you show up at closing time, everybody leaves, and then you're left in this big room by yourself. Now I can study for these classes that I'm taking and wait for something bad to happen. The other thing is that there may be other types of jobs in your area. We spoke earlier with a caller who was looking for that after hours help desk type position. There might be some of those available for you. More than ever, you have the opportunity for something like that. But you're right. Most of the focus you will have over the next 4 years, in my case, 5 years to get through college, is really going to be focusing on your classes. There's going to be a lot to do there. So during this time, while you're waiting to go to the fall and get into college, this is a perfect time to get your certs. You were really spot on with your timing. This is now the time to get that A+, put it in your pocket, and make sure that you renew it during this 3-year period. Thankfully, there's a very easy online way to renew your certifications using CertMaster CE. That stands for continuing education, where you don't have to collect CEUs. You don't have to go to industry trade shows. You don't have to watch videos online. You can simply pay a little bit of money and take this. Effectively, it's a CBT, kind of a computer-based training set up where you watch videos, you answer questions, and you're sort of recertified. But by having that A+ in your pocket will help you when you finally are at a point that you want to get that IT job. And I think your perspective is good as well, which is you generally don't start with a security job. You usually start with a job that's going to teach you the basics. Then you get into networking. You'll learn as much as you can on the networking side. Then you get into IT security, unless you happen to be in a particular geography that does have some entry-level security jobs. There are some out there. They are rare. They're definitely unicorns, but they exist. And if you look hard enough, you may be able to find something like that. The good part about this is there's no wrong way to do this. There's really just finding that job that has a technical thing associated with it, jumping into that job, learning as much as you can, and then you simply level up from there. In IT, it's constantly leveling up. So you level up to the next tier, then you level up to the next tier, and you just keep going. So find anything you can and work through those pieces. I think you've got the right idea, and I like your strategy of going through the A+ now, getting that in your pocket, because I think probably when you get into classes in college, you're going to be spending a lot of time on that content and not so much on maybe jobs or other technical things. In fact, college was a time when I had a lot of fun during the off hours creating my home lab. My home lab was more of a terminal connected to a mainframe because I'm old. But one of the advantages was I got to do a lot with that in that time frame and learned a lot by having that connectivity. You can do the same. It's a great opportunity not to waste. There's a lot of great ways to waste time in college, and you should have fun in college. There are plenty of things you should be doing in college to have fun. It is a great time of your life. But also think about the opportunity you have with all of the people and the systems available to you, because some colleges have some great computing systems and great people. Make sure you take advantage of those too. That might help you as well, Jaden.
Thank you.
I appreciate the call. Thanks, and best of luck. It's one of those, I think, if you're ever in a position where you're in these big companies, they got tons of technology. You're in these big universities and schools, they got tons of technology. How can you not touch that technology? You want to be in the middle of that technology and learning as much as you can. One of the things I would do when I worked operations, because I would be in the room with supercomputers. There was a liquid nitrogen cryogenerator that was cooling the system. I'm monitoring the temperature of the liquid nitrogen. I'm watching the cool water systems. I'm looking at printouts. I'm mounting tapes on the tape drives. And most of the time is downtime. Well, I started looking around for manuals. I'm having to manage all of these systems. Where's the manuals? And I found them. And I just started reading through them like, oh, that's how that works. Oh, that's what that button does. They told me never to touch. And you sort of go through this, and suddenly at the end of this, you now know a lot more about this technology. Then when things would break, they would bring in somebody to fix it. And these folks would sit down at a keyboard and they just go a million miles a minute, typing things in. I'd see things go by on the screen. It was like the Matrix. They knew what was going on, and I just drill them for questions. So I noticed that this was here and that was there. And I read through the manual that this thing was here. How does that work? I see that we have a downtime, and the problem is with this memory. I noticed that you were doing this. How does that work? And they were more than happy to work with you. They knew you were in operations. They knew that this wasn't what you were doing, but they thought, well, someday you may want to do this. And they would spend a little more time going, well, here's what I'm doing. And we're taking this, and we're going to move it over here, and then I'm going to save this off, and then we're going to reload this, and we're going to see what happens. Hit the reset button. And we'd hit the reset button, and then that would work. And I'm okay. Now I'm understanding more about this and how it works. It was just a great opportunity, and you should always take advantage of those. Back to the calls. Thanks for holding for so long. 520 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Professor. My name is Val. I am calling from Tucson, Arizona.
Thank you for calling. Got a little bit of choppiness there. Let's see how it goes. What's your question?
So I am currently attending college through my union for my associates in information technology.
Okay.
And I am kind of having trouble with the logic behind IP addressing. As soon as the numbers get in front of me, I kind of become, I just get turned off immediately.
Sure.
And I've been told by people around me that are also involved with technology that I shouldn't really get bogged down with the logic too much and the theory, because you'll always have a calculator to determine, last usable IP address, But that doesn't seem to be, that makes me nervous, trying to rely on a calculator, So I was wondering if you could kind of talk on that a little bit, how I might be able to solidify those concepts in my brain a bit more.
Absolutely. So for those of you listening, it was a little bit choppy, but we were absolutely able to make all of that out, which is IP addressing is a mystery. IP addressing is some type of magical smoke. We aren't sure how it works. It's a challenge. What is going on with this? It is so difficult. And other people have told you, well, don't worry about it. You got a calculator. Just type it in. There's plenty of websites you can go to with an IP address calculator. You just do that. Now you know what the answer is. Who needs to worry about that? You're not wrong and they're not wrong. But the reality is, if you're in a position that is doing any type of networking or security, you will need to be able to do at least some of this IP addressing subnetting in your head. And if you pull out a calculator in the middle of a meeting when we're trying to write down, we're drawing a network diagram on the wall, we're creating some subnets, we're figuring it out, we're using some CIDR block notation, we're building out, here's where the router is, and then we'll have this subnet on the other side. You better be following them. You don't really have time to pull out a calculator and go, well, let me check the address range for that subnet that you've created there with that CIDR block address. They are not going to have time for you to be able to do that. A lot of this we need to be able to do in our head. Now, that's so, saying that is, I will also put on top of that I have been in many, many meetings where myself and other people have put IP addresses on the board and we've messed the whole thing up, because IP addressing is hard and we mess it up all the time in the real world. It's an easy thing to get wrong. We miss a 1, we miss a 0, and suddenly it's not quite, okay, wait, you're right. We messed that one up. But it's our own fault for using a /27 instead of a /24. Why weren't we using a /24? Well, we didn't think about it. That's really the challenge. Fortunately, the vast majority of networks you go to will be /24, /16s. It'll be easy. But there will be times when you need to use a /30. There will be times. And that's why it's important that you understand how it works. Now, the important thing about subnetting, I will tell you, and you've probably heard this before as well, is that IP subnetting is a ridiculous mystery until all of a sudden it isn't anymore. There is a certain point where you're going to be working through some type of subnetting quick way to do it. And there are many different quick ways, 4 or 5 ways to do this on the internet. You're going to be working through one of these methods and suddenly you're going to get it. You think, oh, I see. And it's suddenly not quite as complex as you thought it was. It's really much more straightforward, but it is very mathy and kind of intensive on understanding the binary decimal representation. But once you kind of get it and you see what's going on, you realize, oh, we're just taking a pie and cutting a pie into even pieces. That's all we're doing with subnetting. That's it. That's as difficult as subnetting actually is. And our pie is a certain size, which means we can fit a certain number of devices in it, and that's it. I would recommend you look at some of the different ways to do. First, look at my videos on how subnetting is really happening at the binary level, and then grab some other videos that are out there, maybe the magic number method. I have a quick way to do it on my site that I use in my certifications that is that's a table I write down. I call it the 7-second subnetting. They're all valid ways to subnet. It's just a quick way to do it, just a shortcut to make it happen. If you are working on your A+, you don't need to know subnetting. If you're working your Network Plus, you might get 1 or 2 questions on the exam that deal with subnetting. If you're taking the Cisco CCNA exam, half that exam seems to be subnetting. It seems that way. It's not quite half the exam, but boy, it sure seems that way. In fact, the 7-second subnetting I created it specifically so that I would have something to use on my Cisco exams, so that I'm not spending time subnetting, I'm spending time on the problem, and the subnetting piece is just taken care of for me. Plus, I don't do well with math under pressure. I get it wrong all the time, so this was just an automated way for me to quickly subnet without having to do any type of math whatsoever. There are other subnetting shortcuts where you have to at least know powers of 2, and that's not horrible. It's horrible for me and maybe others, but it's not horrible for some people. So I think your people who told you, don't worry about it because you'll never need to know it because you can always pull out a calculator, not quite accurate, but it's pretty close, because a lot of times we will write out a design, and especially if it's a very complex design with IP addressing, we might double check our math. We might plug it into an IP subnet calculator just to make sure we're thinking the right thing and that we're not messing up any overlapping subnets, and that we're doing really these broad routing statements that we're doing, that we're really getting the CIDR block notation correct. There's times when you do want to do that automation, but when you're in a room full of people and you're doing some whiteboarding is not the time to do your IP subnet calculations. And that's what I would recommend for you too, is eventually you will need to know how to do it well. At that time, you're going to figure it out. So don't worry too much about it. When it comes time for you to be able to do it, it will all work out for you. It seems to work out that way for all of us anyway.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Professor. I really appreciate you talking on that for me, and all of your content has really been a huge help for me in my classes. Just thanks for taking my call. Thanks for teaching us.
I appreciate you calling. Best of luck, and best of luck with your subnetting. I think I could probably end every call like that. Best of luck with your subnetting. Maybe that's how we should end every call now. And best of luck with your subnetting. No, that just hurts just to hear it, doesn't it? We won't do that. I promise you. Back to the phone calls. Let's go to 813, another Florida call. Hello, caller. Which name are you calling from?
This is John Kemp.
It is John.
Tampa.
Hey, John. Thanks for calling again.
Yeah.
What can we do for you?
Got a question on Linux, specifically Red Hat, and I was curious, is there a website like what you were saying a few minutes ago regarding Microsoft where you can download Windows Server? Is there a way for somebody to get to work with Red Hat without having to buy a copy of that? Because it just seems like if you were to be thrown on an assignment where you had to work with corporate computers, there's probably a pretty good chance what you better know that, or it seems like you might be out of luck if you don't know it. So is there a way to get to work with that?
There's
not having to shell out the money to buy their software.
Yeah, Red Hat is probably not a great example of this, because technically, and I really need to go back and look at my licensing for Red Hat, but it used to be, Red Hat is kind of a corporate Linux, a corporately and well-supported Linux. And at one point, the license for Red Hat, I don't want to talk out of line here, but I recall, perhaps incorrectly, that you also had to have a support license to properly license Red Hat, which is one of the reasons why a lot of us have installed and been using CentOS, which is kind of the open source, non-supported version of Red Hat, if you want to look at it that way. It's not quite that, but it's close enough to that I'm going to call it that. And plus, there's about another billion Linux distributions as well. One of the advantages you have with Linux, of course, is that it's effectively a free operating system to use. There are some examples like Red Hat where there might be value add and a support offering that is required for you to purchase, but the vast majority of Linux distributions are not even anything close to that. So you could download a fully functional installation build of Mint or Ubuntu or CentOS, or pick another one of these Linux distribution that's available of Debian. Pick anything and download it and run it. I think Mint or even Ubuntu might have at least more of a user interface. I need to learn Linux from a comfortable UI configuration, which is very different than the console command line configuration that I have for my CentOS servers. So, and a lot of people in the chat room, this is a great thing to throw to a chat room because everybody has their favorite distribution to run. What I recommend doing is installing on your system, because you're probably not running Linux today. If you're asking, where should I start learning more about Linux, is download some type of virtualization software on your computer if you don't have one already. You should absolutely get the free ones out there, like VirtualBox, are incredibly functional and run in practically any operating system. I run VirtualBox on my Windows and my Mac OS systems. There are some freer versions of perhaps even pay a little freemium or premium versions of virtualization software that you can get from VMware, that you can get from other organizations. I have Parallels on Mac OS that I've paid for and that work and integrate more with the Mac OS operating system. So you may choose a different type of virtualization client depending on what you're doing. But if you're just starting out, VirtualBox is free. It's amazing. It works exceptionally well. It's very fast, and it's perfect to install Linux on. You download that, install it on your Windows machine or your whatever you're using. Then you install, go out to the Ubuntu website, go to Mint, find a CentOS ISO, a distribution of that you can download. You tell your virtual machine, boot from that ISO, because it's a bootable ISO image. Boot from that ISO, which starts you up into the setup for Linux, and you can just immediately start with that setup and go through the setup process, install it, reboot, and now you're running Linux in a window on your Windows desktop. It could not be easier than that. That's as difficult as it gets. The hard part at that point is now what do you do? Do you use that as an operating system? Do you install a web server? Do you install a database server? Do you install some other utility? Do you just play around with the commands? Do you set up a script? There's tons of things you can do. But that is one that is very, very useful to run. There's no money you would have to spend. It's incredibly powerful operating system. I sometimes will kid during my study groups that it's a great operating system if only it worked. And I'm really just referring to running it on a laptop most of the time, because if you don't have an ulcer of some kind, run Linux on a laptop and you'll get one. It's really that easy, because it's so problematic with device drivers. It's gotten a lot better lately. That is the piece that I think can really move you ahead. If you're trying to explain to people, here's what I did with Linux, that's one way to do it. In my video on getting a job in IT with no experience, I talk about installing pfSense, which is a Linux-based firewall. And I talk about installing Snort, which is also, they have a flavor of that for Linux, and talk about running traffic through it to be able to identify the type of traffic that I'm sending and receiving over the internet, identify vulnerabilities, get a familiarity with the firewall itself, get a familiarity with Snort and the alarms that it can send, so that when you sit down in a job, you can say, well, I do have some Linux experience. I've installed Linux and I run a pfSense firewall. I run Snort. In fact, you might even go to the next step and even say, now that I'm running it in a VM, maybe I should buy a piece of hardware and use this as my firewall that I use to connect to the internet. And that's a great next step. And now you're running Linux on something that your entire house is using. And you'll be surprised how many other systems you run into that are running Linux behind the scenes. Plenty of places on the internet to download these. The only thing I would be very careful to caution anybody who's doing this is if you find a distribution of Linux that is already running and set up in a virtual machine, be very careful about what you're downloading, because someone can find Linux, they can build it, they can put something malicious inside of it, and then promote it as an easy-to-install VM for Linux. You don't even have to do the install process. I've already done it for you. Simply run it on your computer. That may not be what you want to do, but installing it from scratch, is a great way to not only learn the installation process, but now you have at least a little bit more comfort or trust that what you're installing has not in some way been manipulated or changed by a third party. You really can't go wrong, John.
Is that CentOS that you mentioned?
It is, yeah.
CENT and then OS?
It is like I don't have any cent, like I'm out of money, like the penny is 1 cent. It is CentOS, yes.
Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
I was going to say, like, I don't have any cents. Well, that doesn't make sense either. It's the penny. That's the key.
Yeah. Thank you.
I appreciate the call. It's one of those, I think, you can have so much fun with that, too. Because once you get Linux installed, there's so many things you can run on top of this. In fact, that's I want to say it's a little bit of a slippery slope. It's really a gateway drug into getting Raspberry Pi, into installing creating your own open NAS, building out your own firewalls. It's just another step along the way. And you start to realize just how powerful this operating system is. Part of I think the power of it is the fact that it is so available because there's no cost. This is, of course, why it has become ingrained in practically every company you work for, is that there's no cost associated with it. You can just install it and run it, and you got a full-blown operating system. So if you're on ProfessorMesser.com right now, you're on lots of Linux that you went through, and you're doing tons of Linux there. So I'm effectively a Linux administrator because of my web server, because of my database server, because of my load balancer. Those are the things you start to do, and you're thinking, we could really do something with this. My NAS is a Synology NAS, so it's a sort of proprietary hardware, but it's really running Linux under the surface. So now I have all these packages that I could install on top of this. My NAS could also be an Active Directory server. My NAS could be an LDAP server. It could be a Radius server. It could be a video server. It could provide file services. It can be a cloud storage. It can be a backup server. All because it's got Linux running on it, I can just load up other features right on top of it. So that's one where if you're ever in a position to think, what do I do next? How can I really extend what I'm doing? Kind of bored here. How can I learn something today? That's a great way to do it. Linux is a fantastic way to make it happen. And it's so simple to find a distribution, install it. In fact, your first step, what you should do is grab 3 separate distributions, install all 3 of them, and notice the significant differences between how they install, some similarities to how they install, and then differences in what they look like, how they're configured, what's really running here, how to change the graphical front end, how to remove the front end so it's just command line. Great functionalities there, and Linux can do it, almost all of it. The challenge you have with Linux, which is if you come from a Windows environment, this will be very different, is nothing is made easy for you. There is a series of extra steps that you have to do to get anything done. Once you understand what's happening behind the scenes, you start to understand the rationalization behind that. But it is sometimes very challenging when you are trying to install some software or upgrade some software, and it says, no, you can't do that. And it gives a very complicated reason why. And you spend most of your time Googling why that doesn't work. I'm almost convinced that Linux is the reason Google exists sometimes, because I'm always going back to Google. Why did I get that message? What is that trying to tell me? Because it also never gives you any plain English messages. It gives some complicated thing that you now have to figure out how to decipher it. And then, oh, that's what it's saying. Now here's how to fix it. Now I can do my installation. There's always an extra step. And if you are on a laptop, and I mentioned this earlier, laptops and desktops, installing Linux as your core operating system, make sure you do lots of work beforehand, because device drivers in Linux can sometimes be a challenge. Sometimes there are not device drivers. Sometimes the device drivers don't work very well. But that's mostly for very unusual chipsets or hardware devices. I have let's do this. I have a thing that I use for video editing. So this is my Shuttle Pro version 2. I use it extensively for video editing. I can't live without this. This allows me to edit very, 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 very quickly. I don't know if that's going to work in Linux. So now I'm going to have to do some research and figure out. I know Linux might see this as a keyboard because it does show up that way as a USB device, but does it have drivers that are going to work for this? It does not. So you're going to have to do the research and think, okay, if I can't use this, can I do something else? That's the situation you'll find yourself in. The biggest challenge you'll probably find is wireless drivers. Wireless drivers will drive you crazy in finding things that you need in Linux. So that's one of those situations where you just have to do your research, know how to work around it, be prepared when it doesn't work, and find maybe an alternative. There is no alternative for that Shuttle Pro. Got to have it. There's nothing else like it. I don't know what it is. And the drivers for Mac OS right now, not so great, but I will deal with it. I'm fine dealing with that because it's just so good. Now that's one of those reasons I often tell people, well, I'll use another operating system. I'm using Mac OS now. Let's use something else. Well, I can't. My whole flow, my whole video creation, edit, publish flow is all built into this. So now, do I move to another operating system? There's going to be some pain involved, and I'm not ready for the pain. I'm fine with what I got. It's working. I'm happy with that. So we'll stick with those pieces. But if you find the right reason for Linux, for me, I couldn't imagine running my web servers on anything else. I couldn't imagine running my database server on anything else. Well, that's strong. I mean, it's been such a powerhouse for so many years. It works so well. Yeah, I would never swap that out. I would never change that to be Linux. So, like I've told people before, I run a lot of different operating systems here. This is Windows over here. This is Mac OS in front of me. So I don't know what's running the video switching software. Probably is a Linux flavor of some kind. And of course on the website is Linux. So I would not change any of those. I specifically chose those operating systems for the thing that they were doing. So that's why I tell people that I don't care what you're using. You're not going to find any fights here over operating systems. We can fight over gaming consoles, I guess. There's always a fight in IT over something. But here it's not operating systems. Do as much operating system research as you can. Learn as much as you can about Windows. Learn as much as you can about Mac OS. Learn as much as you can about Linux. That is your big three that you're going to be tasked with walking in the door. And in fact, you're going to be in situations where fewer people know about Linux, fewer people know about Mac OS when you walk in the door. And if you have some knowledge in that, you may be tapped to cover those different resources. You may be part of those projects. And nothing moves you up in pay and your value to an organization than knowing how to make those operating systems dance around. And if you're very familiar with Linux, you're very familiar with Mac OS, you're very familiar with Windows, you're going to be a very valuable set of skills for that organization. And they're going to want to have you do more with them. And of course, pay you appropriately for those pieces, that's a nice part of it. Something we always have to worry about. In the chat room, there were a number of questions that came of Rogue Squadron said you used the Shuttle Pro in broadcasting or running a teleprompter. Yeah, I guess you could do that because it's got the circle on it. You kind of spin the wheel for the teleprompter to go through. I really just use the buttons on this. And I've even tried recently to swap it out for something else because the drivers for this are not as good as they could be right now in Mac OS, and nothing else really compares. So maybe that's just me. You could see, I don't know if you can tell, but there's there's buttons on this. It's out of focus because it's too close to the camera. But there's these little clear buttons you can put things underneath. The only two that I have are at the top. There's top two buttons because I don't use those buttons. All the other covered buttons don't have covers because I've used this so much. There's 3 covers still left on the buttons that I never use because I use this so much. The buttons don't stick anymore and I've just thrown them off and I just use the buttons the way they are. That's how much right now we've got 111 videos published in the last couple of months just for Security Plus. Yeah, we're using a lot of the Shuttle Pro here for that. You just never know to be able to get that there. Yeah, that's one of the problems is the buttons are specific to a driver that is in the operating system that you're running. Let's see if I can find mine so I can give you a feel for what this is. And I feel your pain there in the chat room. The settings that are there for this, let me bring this up so you can get a feel for it. So these are the configurations I have just for Premiere Pro, which is my video editing software. So you configure it, and then all the buttons are configured to do something. Now, I don't use all these buttons. They were just pre-configured for Premiere Pro, but some of these I do. I do stop and forward and reverse. I use those. I use a zoom in, zoom out. I use those. There's ripple, delete. Yep. Razor all tracks. Yep. But some of these I don't. But the problem is if you happen to be in a different app that uses maybe the all applications option and you accidentally hit a button, that suddenly that means that I'm hitting a slash key and then everything on your system kind of goes crazy. Like whatever app you're in that uses the slash key. What a mess. So I have to be very careful. You notice I was kind of holding it very carefully not to hit a button because I was afraid the entire system would just fall apart. I hit a button and suddenly screens disappear and it all messes up. But that's one of those. I'm not a video production master. I do a very specific kind of video editing very quickly. Not great, but enough. The important part is I'm trying to get across to you these tutorials. And so there's not a lot of motion tracking or titles or that type of thing. But that's a good example where just find the thing that you like to do, learn everything you need to know about that thing, and then you can go to the next one. Then you can tell a story about, the utilities you use to make that happen. You will never be in a position in IT where you know everything about everything. There's just too many things to know about and too much of those things to know about. But you need to know a little bit about everything, and there will be some things where you want to deep dive. The more of a knowledge-specific expert you are in that thing, the more valuable you're going to be. Niches are very important in IT. Niches are really important in general. But find the niche you like, and your niche is going to change. Your interests will change over time. Your job will change over time. Sometimes you become an expert in a niche. You weren't even expecting it, but you were assigned to a project. You're now responsible for that project, and suddenly you go the deep dive on whatever that topic is. And a year later, you look back, think, wow, I spent a lot of time learning that niche. Sometimes that knowledge can't be taken anywhere else. Sometimes you'll use that knowledge the rest of your career. You just never know. But if you're ever in a situation where you can learn and become an expert in anything, it almost always is going to work out better for you. There's almost always an upside to that. If there's nothing else you take away from this study group today, that's the one to take away, is become an expert in something. Find something and learn everything you can about it, and you will be able to use that in your career. It will help you either as through your moving up in your career, being able to use that information later on in your career, the amount of you get it for pay, it sort of improves everything. And it's never always about technology. It's often about other things outside the technology. Becoming an expert in explaining to people a problem or working through an issue is almost just as important as understanding the technology behind it. So that's one of those. Another question from the chat room. Any thoughts on the depth of scripting knowledge needed for the 1002? Yeah, you don't need any. You need zero scripting knowledge. Now, I say this, and the part that may be confusing to folks is section 4.8 is one that is fortunately appropriately named, identify the basics of scripting. And that is the one that really explains how much you need to know about this. You don't need to know how to script a batch file, a PS1 file, a VBS file, a shell file, Python, JavaScript. You don't need to know how to script in those. You need to know when are those scripts used. On what operating systems would you see those scripts in use? What is commonly done with those scripts? That's as much as you need to know. You will not be asked to script anything. You will not be shown a script and asked a question like, why is this script not working? What do we change in the script to make it do this thing? You'll never be asked that. That's not what this is about. This is about understanding, oh, wow, they just gave me a .py file. What do I do with this? What is this for? They're telling me to run a shell script. What is that? You should not be in that position. So the exam objectives are giving you some insight into, if somebody tells you to run a shell script, this is what that is. If somebody says this is a Python script, this is what you should expect to see and where it will run. But you do not need to know any automation for this. Now, talk about niches and knowing things. I've mentioned in my study group a couple days ago, from an automation perspective, if you were very familiar with PowerShell and or Python, those two things, PowerShell and Python, you can go pretty far in this industry because those are two skills you will use the rest of your career. No question. To some degree, sometimes more, sometimes less. Those two automation scripting skills are very valuable. Now, it's different than coding. There was a caller earlier that said, I'm doing some IT, but I also said I'd like to do some programming. Well, those are two jobs, brother. You need to figure out what direction you want to go because you're going to do IT or you're going to do application programming. But those are two different worlds that do not touch each other. Maybe there's a little overlap, just a tiny little sliver of an overlap in the middle, but that's it. You're installing the application somebody else wrote. There's your overlap. But you do not, never in a situation where you are going to work in IT, but be very knowledgeable in doing C++ application programming or writing iOS apps. No, doesn't work that way. You do one or the other because you're going to spend an entire career figuring out the nuances of programming or an entire career figuring out the details of IT. The place where you do some of what people call coding or programming is really scripting. It's automation in IT. The better you are with doing scripting and automation and working with PowerShell and Python is really the best place or a good place to start with those. The better off you're going to be in the industry. And you're not going to be a programmer. It's not programming. It's not coding. That's not what it's about. You're not building an app. You're simply doing the boring things or the things that need to be automated and making it do that automation so that you don't have to be there. That's the really important part of this, is doing that. Hopefully that gives you some perspective anyway into the process of things that might help you. We've gone through a lot today. We talked about operating systems and where you should look for a job and skills that are going to help you through your entire career. Just something we do every month on the study group, I guess. We'll do it again next week. We've got a Network Plus study group next week where on Wednesday, we'll do this again. I'll have questions in the first hour. We'll open up the phone lines in the second hour, except it's all about networking, which is where things really shifted for me. When I got to networking. That's when my world changed, is when I started finding out what was inside the packets. So I drilled down in the packets, become an expert in the protocol decodes. Everything changed at that point. Maybe I'll tell that story after on the after show on Wednesday. In the meantime, come on back to Professor Messer if you need your voucher. We now have the vouchers available for you to discount, along with my Exam Hacks book, which I think is a great book to help you through the process of taking that exam. And of course, we'll do another live stream. Check the calendar for that at professormesser.com/calendar. We love doing these. We like that you're here. It's kind of boring when you're not. It'd be a very bad live stream if you weren't here to ask questions. So I appreciate that. Thank you for being along with that. And for those of you that are looking for more Security Plus, we got more Security Plus videos coming out this week, coming out over the weekend. There's a lot going on. And we'd love for you to be here along for the ride. There's never a dull moment. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everyone.